wins for Donald Trump. Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, he's carried his home state of Texas as well as Oklahoma. Marco Rubio finally got on the boards. He carried Minnesota, the caucuses in Minnesota. He gets one state tonight. Hillary Clinton has done well tonight. She has won 7 states: Georgia, Virginia, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, and Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders, he's done well as well. Vermont, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Minnesota, 4 states for Bernie Sanders. We have a key race alert on an outstanding contest right now. And that outstanding contest, well, first of all, American Samoa. Hillary Clinton has won American Samoa. The Democratic caucuses, there are still 6 delegates from American Samoa, the U.S. territory in the Pacific. In Vermont, it's still up in the air. 84% of the vote is in on the Republican side, 32.5% for Donald Trump. John Kasich, 30.6%. Marco Rubio, he's in third place at 19.4%. But Donald Trump is ahead of John Kasich by 1,027 votes in the Vermont Republican primary right now. Let's go over to John King. Taking a closer look at all of these contests tonight. Vermont's still outstanding on the Republican side.
Still outstanding. Donald Trump leading. If he holds that lead, Wolf, the map looks pretty good for Donald Trump tonight. We're waiting for Alaska. These are delegates allocated so far. The numbers will change as we continue to allocate delegates throughout the night. These are just delegates we've allocated tonight. As you look, Rubio gets his first win. The question is it good enough? The Minnesota win. His campaign says he's staying in. They say that in the Midwest and then in Florida on March 15, things will get better. You just talked to Senator Cruz, who says this is great for him. He's the only guy who's beaten Donald Trump 3 times. The question is, where does he go next? There are some other southern states where you would think would be Cruz strongholds in the calendar in the days and weeks ahead. But if you look outside of Texas and neighboring Oklahoma, Donald Trump has been cutting into what Ted Cruz thought was his base. This was, Marco Rubio said this earlier, and he's right about this, this was supposed to be Ted Cruz's big night down here. He didn't get it, but he did get 2 wins, Rubio getting only 1. So it kind of undermines the Rubio argument that this is anything but a survival night for him. It's certainly not a good night. Looks very good for Donald Trump as we wait for Alaska and the final numbers in Vermont. And this is a big night for Hillary Clinton. Yes, Sanders getting wins in Vermont, Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Colorado. Hillary Clinton, in the delegates we've allocated so far, has a sizable lead. Her case is the base of the Democratic Party, African-American voters, Latinos as well in Texas. She's winning big, which she says bodes well as the calendar goes on. Bernie Sanders isn't going anywhere, Wolf. And the big fight, you mentioned we have the big debate in Flint coming up. The next big fight for the Democrats, Hillary Clinton's going to have to prove if she can beat Bernie Sanders in the industrial Midwest, continue to stretch out the delegate lead. The math is already hard for Bernie Sanders, but he has some opportunities to change the momentum. The Midwest will be the next big test.
Just think if she would have carried all those states, with the exception of Vermont tonight, she would have been in much better shape. But he did pretty well. 4 states, that's pretty good.
4 states is pretty good. It keeps him in the hunt. If he's just a message candidate and he's not winning any states, then it's hard to make the case we should go on. He wins 4 states. He certainly has the right to say, give me an opportunity to prove I can win as we move forward. I will tell you the Clinton campaign is very happy about this. It's a very narrow win. Look how close it is. A very narrow win. But they are very happy to at least get the moral victory. The delegates are going to be roughly evenly split between the two. But I know that Congressman Jim McGovern from the Worcester area, some other Hillary Clinton supporters in the state worked very hard to turn out votes today, and they needed every last one of them. As you watch the count in Massachusetts now up to 100%, a very narrow win there. But she is very happy to make the point that Bernie Sanders did not sweep New England in the states that have voted so far. You look at the map, there's no question. We're through 15 contests. Advantage Donald Trump, advantage Hillary Clinton, but the race goes on, and as wild a year as it's been, we could probably expect
Look at all those southern states that she won as well, all the way South Carolina the other day, but all these other states today.
And a flip, if you will, that go back to the 2008 map. Hillary Clinton did win Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, Tennessee, and Florida. But look at this area right here. This is Barack Obama in 2008. Now come forward to look in 2016. Hillary Clinton's hoping to essentially take that swath of this is the African-American, the southern base of the Democratic Party, African-American voters, and she's winning by whopping margins. If you look at the exit polls and her margins among African-Americans, as well as Latinos in Texas, a healthy margin as well, that is what the Clinton campaign, their argument is, we are winning the more diverse states. We're winning the states with the traditional Democratic coalition. The challenge now is to prove it as you move on. And again, when you get to these industrial Midwestern states, her one weakness in these polls has been working-class whites, especially working-class blue-collar white men. That is the Sanders opportunity as we go into Ohio, Michigan, and beyond in the Midwest.
Thanks very much, John. I want to walk back over to Jake and Dana. Guys, let's not forget, keep this perspective. Donald Trump, he's a big winner tonight. He has done well. There's still a couple of states outstanding. He could do even better.
He is, although the Republican establishment is still in revolt about this and still trying to talk about any way possible that they could prevent him from becoming the Republican nominee. David Chalian, if I can go to you, looking at our exit polls, our political director, a big question, of course, is how do voters feel about Donald Trump? You have Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio continuing to say that a majority of the voters don't want Donald Trump. But how do they feel?
Right. Well, Jake, one of the things that we're starting to look at now, since Trump had such a dominant night tonight, is sort of peek ahead to what kind of work he would have to do to move towards a general election strategy. Obviously, the Republican nomination race is not over. You heard from Marco Rubio, you heard from Ted Cruz tonight, but clearly Donald Trump was dominant tonight. So we asked voters today in many of the states, would you be satisfied or dissatisfied with Donald Trump as the nominee? All four of these states we're going to look at, Donald Trump won tonight. That's important to remember. In Alabama, 56% say yes, satisfied if Trump is the nominee. 42% say no. Take a look at Tennessee. 55% say yes, they're satisfied, a majority. 41% say no. Now let's look at Arkansas, and that is 46%, not a majority, say yes, they'd be satisfied. A majority, 52%, say they would not be satisfied, even though he won the Arkansas primary tonight. And in Virginia, that is where he may have his biggest task ahead. 54% say no, they would not be satisfied with Donald Trump as the nominee. Remember, these are voters in the Republican primary in Virginia tonight. 44% say yes. Virginia, as you and Dana know, is a major, major battleground state come the fall. And if Donald Trump is indeed the nominee here, guys, this is going to be mission critical here. He's got some work to do in a key battleground state like Virginia to bring his own party together, which, you know, does happen naturally. But clearly that's going to be on his task list as he moves ahead to a potential general fight against Hillary Clinton.
Very interesting. And Dan, of course, we're in the throes of a very heated political combat. And so, you know, 54% in Virginia saying, no, I would not be satisfied as, if Donald Trump was the nominee. It might not be that high a number come Election Day.
It might not. And David just said that generally what happens is once the primary is over, voters on each side kind of tend to come together around their nominee. He says that happens naturally. I don't think anything this year is going to happen naturally on the Republican side because there is such deep division. And as we were reporting earlier tonight, or I guess it's yesterday at this point, East Coast time, that there is finally a movement of donors, people with very, very, very deep pockets, trying to get behind a super PAC that is going to try to launch more ads and we're not sure exactly what else against Donald Trump. They started in Iowa. They were funded in Iowa. They felt like they were successful in Iowa where Donald Trump didn't win. But then I'm told that they couldn't really find donors until now. As you were saying earlier, maybe too late, but they're going to try at least.
Yeah, and Anderson, obviously Donald Trump says that he can expand the map. He's bringing people into the party who didn't vote Republican before, but now the question is, will he also at the same time be chasing people out of the party?
Yeah, and it's a good question with their panel. Kevin, you heard what Ted Cruz was saying to Wolf Blitzer earlier, basically sort of saying that now is the time for everybody other than Trump to kind of get together. When you hear that, what does that actually mean? Though?
Well,
I mean, because they all think that means the other people have to get out.
It's very hard to see. And if you take yourself inside the psychology of a campaign, for those of us that have worked on campaigns, everybody inside that campaign right now is not focused on whether or not they should somehow police the party, but instead it's how do we continue to get our guy elected. And that's one of the most difficult parts of this, which is trying to show these campaigns that they somehow don't have a path when they clearly believe that they do.
Right.
Or alternatively, they believe that if they're the last man standing, even in a contested convention, that they stand the best chance. So it's just very hard right now for me to see this field clear, particularly when you given the fact that the numbers in Ohio point to John Kasich running strong. He believes he may run strong in other states like Michigan, while at the same time, Marco Rubio and his supporters all believe he can win Florida, and then that win in Florida is going to give them the momentum that they need to continue on. So it's just really hard to see any of these campaigns talking themselves into dropping out.
I feel like I have to raise my hand because I want to ask the question, why is Ben Carson still in the race? I mean, and I ask that just very sincerely because, I mean, Ted Cruz would benefit the most, I do believe, from Ben Carson dropping out. I think that they have the same type evangelical voter. And going into Mississippi, I think that would benefit Ted Cruz the most.
It's whether or not it's enough, though, and I don't think those votes are perfectly transferable.
And I agree with you also, but to go to your point, just your thesis here, that, you know, John Kasich can win Ohio. Marco Rubio has a chance in Florida. Where does Ben Carson get any inkling that he gets anything other than a continuation of his Secret Service detail?
But to that point, even if John Kasich does go ahead and win Ohio, it will be statistically impossible for them to clinch the nomination. Yes, they can take their delegates to a brokered convention, but, I mean, we can all look at the numbers. Ben Carson isn't getting delegates. John Kasich, even in the best, rosiest scenario, is not going to get delegates.
He's getting them in
so
Vermont, though.
there should be some pressure by people who do want to see the field winnow to say, hey, you have no chance. This is March Madness now. You don't advance to the next bracket.
Why wouldn't Ben Carson just stay in the race? I mean, it's probably not costing him that much to stay in. It keeps his name out there. He gets to be in the debates. He gets to sell books.
Be the next Secretary of HHS.
Gloria showed me the headline tonight, and it said Carson says he's here to stay or something.
Yeah.
And I asked her if it was The Onion. I mean, because there's no real, I mean, not to be disrespectful, but he's not really running for president anymore. He's running for something else, sell books or something else.
Vanity campaign.
I think we mistake Ben Carson as a candidate. I don't think he's a candidate. He's a brand, and that's why he's in, because he's getting all this free publicity. We're talking about him, and that is books, and that is speeches, and that's what...
I will point out, it's the first time we have talked about him. But
well, I mean, over the period of his campaign.
I know.
But I just want to make a quick point on this race. When there was, it's maybe self-serving, when there were 17 candidates, I wrote a column saying they're never going to defeat Trump with 16 other people running against him. Now there are basically just 2 other people running against him, and what
they still can't do it.
Candidates tonight is they're not going to get out either. So it's the best thing for Trump to have Cruz and Rubio asking each other to get out, and it's not going to happen. So
I mean, when you build,
the question is what here, right? It is virtually impossible, not impossible, virtually impossible for anyone other than Donald Trump to get to the necessary number of delegates before the convention.
Right.
Yep. And so, like, if any other candidate other than Trump had this lead and had the night we had, we would have called it over. The party would have gotten together late tonight in a smoke-filled room. Donors would have told everyone else to get out. Let's focus on the
They
gentleman.
would have done it after South Carolina.
But this goes to the point that the numbers that David Chalian talked about, where this high level of dissatisfaction with the idea of Trump being the nominee. Now, look, primaries are brutal. A lot of raw nerves are exposed. But even in 2012, we never saw these type of numbers as it related to Governor Romney. People, while they were supporting Rick Santorum or they were supporting Newt Gingrich, they had socialized themselves to the idea that Mitt Romney was going to eventually be the nominee and were willing to support him in much greater numbers. So I think those are some very problematic numbers. And I think in primaries, the key to the unifying in a general election is forgiving and forgetting. The forgetting part here is going to be really hard with Donald Trump.
Let me ask you, I mean, to Dan's point, how in past campaigns, how do candidates get out beyond if it's not the candidate or the immediate circle around the candidate who are heavily invested and are just focused on keeping going? Is it the rich donors getting together and then saying to the candidate, no more money?
Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum, they ran out of money. Right. They got to the point where the well-funded Romney campaign had 20-1 probably fundraising advantage, and the only way that their campaigns were running was based on the fumes of super PACs. And we don't see that right now.
Well,
I mean, Marco Rubio's case, his super PAC is raising millions and millions of dollars every single day. Small donors, big donors are coming into the regular campaign. This is a campaign that can be funded all the way through Cleveland.
Yeah, although I think if he loses Florida, if he loses Florida, it's hard for him to go on. If John Kasich loses Ohio, it's hard for him to go on. It seems to me like March 15th is a pretty significant date. Now, it's likely to be Donald Trump who beats them if they lose, and that only accelerates his momentum.
Before South Carolina, Barbara Bush was in there campaigning for Jeb, and she was recalling her husband's victory in Iowa, in which the headline was "The Big Mo," and she said, There was the Big Mo, and then there was no Mo. And what we have here tonight is the Big Mo keeps going and going and going and going for Donald Trump. And at a certain point, this just becomes impractical for these other people.
Donald Trump being able to unite the party, I have seen no signal,
But nobody's
zero
gonna get out of a
signal
race
that
because
he
of that.
would look at. No, but let's look at the brutal campaign that he's run against his opponents. He is called Ted Cruz a liar, Marco Rubio lightweight. I mean, we can go through all the insults he's hurled at other people. How could he possibly be the one that brings people over to his side to regain the trust
But
of
Amanda,
people like me?
Ted Cruz called the majority leader of the Senate a liar on the floor of the Senate. There is such antipathy toward him among elements of the party. How could he be the guy who brings the party together?
It's a
question
much
that
different
there isn't
scenario when you're
anybody.
campaigning against Washington from inside Washington and going out on the
But you
campaign trail. I mean, look at the. I mean, he's had an open appeal tonight. Please come join my campaign. If you want to win, if you want to stop Hillary, you need to stop Trump, and I'm the best vehicle.
But
Isn't the argument more David's argument, which is, isn't it even more offensive? I mean, things happen on the campaign trail, and then it's over, and then sort of old wounds are sewn up. To actually be on the floor of the Senate calling somebody a liar,
Right.
that seems more direct.
Campaigning
But
against
that
your
is the part of
colleagues in the
exposing
Senate.
the ways of Washington that people are so angry about. I mean, I was cheering when Ted Cruz gave that speech because as someone who's worked outside Washington and know how those deals go down, for someone to stand on the U.S. floor of the Senate and say, this is how it works, America, I'm telling you what's going on, and I will be the person to change that.
How do you
I mean, you're a
how do you then
uniter.
get in the
That
White
doesn't
House and
mean
unify
you
the
can
country?
unite people. That's the problem for Ted Cruz.
Okay, Dan, and then we got to get a break.
People don't believe him when he says, I want to be a uniter. It just doesn't seem credible even to
But I will say,
Republicans.
just to explain his case a little bit more, since I did work for the guy, he understands that America is united against Washington. And he said, this is the difference between me and Donald Trump. Donald Trump will go shake hands with Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, strike deals with Mitch McConnell. I will stand up to the bad deals in Washington. That is the case for his
He's
candidacy.
been trying to make that case. He can't.
We got to take a break. We're awaiting results in Alaska. We'll be right back.
The Republicans have started caucusing in Alaska right now. We got some live pictures. We'll show you what's going on in Anchorage, Alaska. We'll hopefully get some results fairly soon. The last contest of the night on this Super Tuesday. In Vermont, 87% of the Republican primary vote has been tallied right now. Very close, 978 votes. Donald Trump ahead of John Kasich, 18,065 to 17,087 in the percentage bracket. You see 32.5% for Trump, 30%, 30.8% for Kasich. Rubio distant third, 19.3%. We have not yet projected a winner in Vermont. We're watching very closely. Once again, 87% of the votes are in. Let's update you on the winners in all of the contests tonight. The Republican contest, let's start with Donald Trump. Big winner tonight, he carries Georgia, Alabama, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Virginia, and Arkansas. Republican Senator Ted Cruz, he carries his home state of Texas and Oklahoma, wins 2 states tonight. Marco Rubio finally picks up a win. The caucuses, the Republican caucuses in Minnesota. On the Democratic side, a very good night for Hillary Clinton. She carries 7 states: Georgia, Virginia, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, and Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders, he does well himself. He carries 4 states, his home state of Vermont, plus Oklahoma, Colorado, and Minnesota. There's a fight going on between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Remember, we got a CNN Democratic presidential debate Sunday night in Flint, Michigan, between these 2 Democratic candidates. You're going to want to see that debate. Let's go back to Jake and Dana. Jake?
We've talked about a lot of candidates this evening, but there's one who hasn't gotten a lot of our attention, and that's Dr. Ben Carson. He just put out a statement indicating that he is going to stay in the race despite no victories or even, as far as I can tell, top 4 finishes in any state this evening.
No, that's right. And look, he has made clear that he is not going anywhere all along, even though he hasn't done well in any of these states. But I am told that as early as tomorrow, this is according to a D.C. senior Republican, that Ben Carson could be approached by establishment figures here in Washington to say, you know what, Dr. Carson, we have an idea. Why don't you instead of running for president, run for Senate in Florida. He is from Florida. There's an open seat because Marco Rubio is retiring. He's not running for re-election. He's running for president instead. And so that might be a possibility, something that he could be approached about. Now, this hasn't happened yet. I'm told that this is likely to happen. And I don't even know that Ben Carson knows anything about it yet, but it's something that's interesting to think about as people in Washington talk about trying to win other field. Ben Carson's not taking that much of the vote away, but when you do have some narrow wins and losses in some of these states, it could make a difference.
The theory from the Cruz campaign is that Carson is taking votes away from him, although, as has been pointed out, in Iowa, which is a caucus state where people actually have to do their first and their second choice, the votes did not go to Ted Cruz. Dr. Ben Carson indicating this evening he is in it, in the presidential race for the long haul, saying that he keeps getting support from millions and millions of people who want him to be president. And as long as he keeps getting their support, and in his words, as long as the Lord keeps opening doors for him, he's going to stay in this race. So whatever the establishment cooks up for him in terms of a Florida Senate seat, it almost seems irrelevant. He doesn't seem to really care.
Maybe, unless maybe he hasn't pondered that idea, but I don't know. I think he's seen what's going on Capitol Hill, just like we all have. I don't know if anybody would really be that eager to jump out of a presidential race and jump into a Senate race at this point.
The other candidate we haven't talked a lot about this evening is John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, who, as we saw just a second ago, is in second place as of right now. The vote count still coming in Vermont.
That's right.
But not a good day for John Kasich. He didn't think it was going to be a good day. He's looking ahead at other states, including his home state of Ohio.
Especially his home state of Ohio. First will come Michigan. His campaign is playing. He's playing hard in Michigan, hoping that he does well there. His top advisor is the former John McCain advisor for 2000. So in some ways, he's following that same path. He's a similar kind of candidate. New Hampshire, playing hard in New Hampshire, then Michigan, and then, of course, it's all about Ohio. And he's made pretty clear he's not going anywhere until that particular contest, which is March 15th.
All right, Wolf has the projection. Wolf.
They closed in Vermont 5.5 hours or so ago. Now we're ready for a projection. CNN projects Donald Trump is the winner in the Vermont Republican presidential primary. It's a close race, but based on all the information we have right now, our projection is that the billionaire real estate magnate is the winner in Vermont. Here are the votes right now, with 87% of the vote actually counted. He's ahead, 32.6%. John Kasich in second place, 30.7%. Marco Rubio in third place, 19.3%. He's got a lead of 1,015 votes right now. CNN projects Donald Trump wins another state, the state of Vermont. Here's where the situation stands right now. With Vermont, Donald Trump tonight has won 7 states: Georgia, Alabama, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Virginia, Arkansas, and Vermont. Ted Cruz, he's carried 2 states, Texas and Oklahoma. Marco Rubio, he's got 1 state, Minnesota. On the Democratic side, a good night for Hillary Clinton. Let's show our viewers 7 states she won: Georgia, Virginia, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, and Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders, he carries 4 states: Vermont, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Minnesota. So there's a contest on the Democratic side, but a good night, a very good night for Hillary Clinton, an excellent night also for Donald Trump. Jake?
That's right, Wolf. When you look at the results, I wish we could say we had some further clarity on either one of these races, but we don't. We have Donald Trump winning 7 contests, Hillary Clinton winning 7 contests, and enough contests not being won by the 2 frontrunners to keep the competition going. Cruz winning 2, Rubio winning 1, and then Bernie Sanders winning, as of now, 4.
That's right. And, of course, underneath the wins and the losses is the reality that this is a delegate race. And even the candidates who came in second in some places, depending on what their percentage was, third some places, they're still going to get delegates tonight. So, it's going to take a while to add it all up and see what it all means. But it's obviously a big win for Donald Trump. But The Rubio campaign is insisting that they're doing well, even though he only had one win. We'll see how many delegates they really get at the end. And same with Cruz. They're saying that they're getting a lot of delegates. Texas is by far the biggest prize when it comes to the amount of delegates. But remember, and we talked about this earlier, the South was supposed to be his firewall.
Right.
Ted Cruz was supposed to, by their prediction, do extremely well in a lot of these southern states where Donald Trump won.
But the brash developer from Queens won instead throughout the South. Let's go to Mark Preston, our political editor, to talk about the delegate count. Mark, walk us through where we are right now. Who's going to get what?
Well, you know, Jake, certainly we've heard all the candidates come out tonight and they've expressed success in some way or another, but it really does come down to a game of mathematics. Let's look on the Republican side right now. 595 delegates at stake tonight. Let's look at where Donald Trump has landed right now. So far, he has 148 delegates he has amassed tonight, followed by 65 for Ted Cruz and 37 for Marco Rubio. When you add those all together and you look at Donald Trump, you're looking at about 230 delegates for Donald Trump, 82 for Ted Cruz, 53 for Marco Rubio. Now you need 1,237 to secure the Republican presidential nomination. I should point out, too, before we move on to the Democrats, we still have about 230 delegates to award tonight, so we'll be counting those here at the decision desk. But let's talk about the Democrats right now. Hillary Clinton right now has amassed 296 delegates tonight in her victories across the country, followed by 183 for Bernie Sanders. Now, when you add all those numbers together year to date, at this point, Hillary Clinton has 855 delegates to Bernie Sanders' 269. And let me just explain that very quickly for our viewers. These delegates also include the so-called super delegates. These are elected officials who have pledged their support to Hillary Clinton or to Bernie Sanders, and in this case, in a large way for Hillary Clinton, who can help her get over the finish line to win the Democratic nomination. You need 2,383 delegates to become the Democratic nominee, Jake. And as I said, we're still counting the numbers on the Republican side. We're doing the same thing on the Democratic side. About 350 delegates still need to be awarded. Tonight, we'll be doing that here. Jake?
All right, Mark Preston, thank you so much. We still have one more race to call. That's the Alaska Republican Caucus. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you can see them right now counting in Alaska. We'll tell you more. Stay with us.
Still one Republican presidential contest outstanding. We're going to Alaska. The caucus is there underway right now. Paul Verkaman is in Anchorage at one of the caucus sites. How does it look over there, Paul?
Well, Wolf, as Keith Jackson would say in college football terms, it's been an absolute barn burner. Huge, massive turnout in Alaska tonight. You can see they are still counting here in West Anchorage. This is perhaps the largest of all the polling places in Alaska. It combines 4 large districts in an extreme Republican stronghold. The votes still being counted here. They're not in, but we do have a trickling in of some votes from Wrangell. Donald Trump, 49 votes. You had Ben Carson with 19, Cruz with 7, Kasich with 7, and Rubio with 20. And as is only in Alaska, you've got these far-flung places. We have Soldotna has some votes that just came in a short time ago. We'll call it the trickle-in theory of counting these votes, Wolf. You had Carson with 6, Cruz with 10, Kasich 0, Rubio 3, and Trump 9. In exit polling that I was able to do tonight, both here in Anchorage and in Wasilla, we heard a lot of people saying that they wanted Trump, a lot of support for Cruz as well. Back to you now, Wolf.
All right, Paul Verkaman in Anchorage, Alaska. We'll stay in touch with you as those Republican caucuses continue. I want to walk over to John King. Let's take a look at the big picture, Republican side and Democratic side tonight. Donald Trump, he carries 7 states, first of all. That's obviously very significant.
And he's expecting to add number 8 in Alaska tonight. We're waiting for the results to come in as Alaska caucuses. It's a state where, as you noted earlier, I think a little bit earlier, Sarah Palin's endorsement. Also, it's a state kind of built for Trump, anti-Washington, change Washington. You can find that sentiment in Alaska every day of the week, 365 days a year. You look at the map filling in. It's very impressive for Donald Trump in the big picture now, 15 contests in, wins in New England, wins down the seaboard here, wins across the South, and, of course, the Nevada win there. Trump making the case it's time for the party to unify around him. Cruz making the case with 2 more wins tonight, one at home in Texas, but don't discount it. It's a win. Texas is a big state. He wins in Oklahoma, making the case he's now won 3 times. Rubio finally gets a win, Wolf, but as we're counting the delegates tonight, it's going to be a disappointing night for Marco Rubio in the sense that he finally gets on the win board, but it'll be a pretty even allocation of the delegates here in Minnesota, and he's below the threshold in several other states, so he's not going to get delegates from some states, including the big prize of Texas. He'll come away with nothing in Texas because of his performance. Let's switch and look at the Democratic map again. If you're Hillary Clinton, this is playing out just as you would like. A big delegate win for her tonight, and we're still counting some of them, but that's a rough allocation so far. And she got the very narrow win in Massachusetts. She wanted that to prove the point that she could come into New England and beat Bernie Sanders. She's winning across the South, a big win in Texas. The margins, if you look among African Americans and Latinos, are off the charts. The Clinton campaign likes that. And it says Sanders did win Vermont, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Minnesota. The Clinton campaign saying tonight that its mathematical lead in pledged delegates, never mind the superdelegates it holds, is as big as Barack Obama ever had in the 2008 campaign. So they are trying to build the sense, not quite of inevitability, but that they have a big mathematical lead going forward. Quick look, if you want, just at the delegates, is that we now have moved from the momentum phase into the math phase of the campaign with so many states. Again, at the end of the night, the Democratic race is going to look something like this. We're still allocating a few delegates. These are not hard numbers, but something like this with Clinton starting to pull away from Bernie Sanders. The proportional Democratic rules still give you come in second place, whichever candidate does, still gets a chunk. So Sanders can argue he's close, but Clinton's starting to pull away, especially if you put the superdelegates in a context. That would put her out here. But without them, she still has a lead. And again, the contest is going to move. Some other southern states coming up in the next few days. Florida on March 15th, critical to both campaigns. Bernie Sanders really needs to make a statement in the Midwest if he's going to change the arc of this campaign, which is pro-Clinton at the moment. Come over to the Republican side and bring up the Super Tuesday numbers. Again, an impressive night for Donald Trump, especially from a delegate perspective. We're allocating the Alaska delegates to him for now. We're still waiting for those votes, of course, but expecting a Trump win in Alaska. The Republican race, again, these will fluctuate a little bit as we allocate congressional districts. A lot of the delegates in here are allocated by congressional district. Something like this by the end of the night. And again, this is why Ted Cruz is making the case. Marco Rubio, you had your chance. Marco Rubio likely to end the night under 100 delegates, maybe at 100 delegates if he gets a couple more in some congressional districts. Trump inching away. Ted Cruz trying to make the case, you guys should rally around me, and then we'd have a chance. But at the moment, at the end of the night, Donald Trump in the driver's seat of the Republican race, Hillary Clinton in the driver's seat of the Democratic race.
7 states, a win of 7 states. That's very significant for Hillary Clinton and for Donald Trump, for that matter. Anderson, back to you.
Yeah. After South Carolina, where Hillary Clinton did so well among African-American voters, there were questions about would that continue in some of these other states. What have we seen tonight?
Well, it continued and more in Alabama. 93% of the African-American vote. Arkansas, 90%. In Tennessee, 85%. In Georgia, 83%. I guess that's, and then in Texas, she got 71% of the Latino vote. This is important as you look at these big states on March 15th. And even Michigan, which has a quarter of the vote, is African-American there in the primary. But Illinois, a quarter of the vote, African-American. Florida, between Latinos and African-Americans, about a third of the vote in that primary. She has such a lock on those minority voters that it gives her a tremendous advantage. And Bernie Sanders has to beat her overwhelmingly among the rest of the electorate in order to get ahead. And as you can see in some of the states that are all white, he's not running up those kind of numbers that would make you think that he would. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to get a lot of delegates along the way and that he would or should get out of this race. He shouldn't. He has a long way to go here. But it is very tough with proportional representation and this kind of advantage with minorities for him to actually overtake her moving forward.
And yet he's still, I mean, he got a number of states tonight, and for the upcoming debate Sunday on CNN, there was some thought, is she going to sort of pivot away from him and be focusing on Donald Trump? I mean, this is still a fight between them.
It is.
We're probably likely to see that play out.
Absolutely. I think the loss in Massachusetts, though, was not good for him. It was a state, I think, that they really wanted to win. You would know more about that. But the Sanders people raised $42 million last month. They are going to continue. And what we heard from Bernie Sanders tonight was say this wasn't so much about winning the presidency as it was about ideas, essentially. And it wasn't a concession speech at all. But you have the sense that Bernie Sanders wants to continue to leave his imprint
and
on the Democratic race, and he's done it.
Yeah.
You know, it was a very, very good night for Hillary Clinton, no doubt. You've got to give her credit for that. But it's also a good night for Bernie Sanders. I think he came away with three things. Certainly, he came away. He's got the money, as you pointed out. The 42, I would point out, in February is on top of 21.3 in January. So to Kevin's point that people drop out when they run out of money, he's not going to run out of money. He does have the message. He talked again about that tonight every time he does. And now he's got some wins. He got 4 wins tonight where at the beginning of this evening, like, what was it, 12 hours ago, people were saying, well, maybe he'll win Vermont and sort of that's it. He's got 4 states, and that's good. And with Michigan, Illinois, Ohio coming up, where he's got to do better and has a chance to do better.
There's nothing that suggests in the numbers tonight that he's going to do well in those states. I think March 15th, as Axelrod pointed out, is the moment that will determine. Bernie Sanders may stay in the race, but the race will be over for all intents and purposes on that day when those big states vote. Right? It is impossible to come back from the pledged delegate lead he has, the pledged delegate deficit he has right now, and so that is where it's going to be. He should stay in the race and stay as long as he feels he can afford to do it and wants to do it. But Hillary Clinton is on a path to the nomination right now that is incredibly strong.
I think anybody who says, with all due respect, that it's over and there's mathematically no way. I remember people saying that about Hillary. You're saying that about Hillary Clinton in 2008, and she didn't get out. She kept plugging away. Now she didn't win, but she had every reason.
Right. You can plug away all you want, but it's a question of we're going to win or not. Yeah, that's an important point there.
Now, she had every reason to stay in, and Bernie's got every reason.
No,
one's saying he should get out.
He should get out. The question is, he just has a tough road to hoe to become
absolutely
a nominee.
a tough road,
but he's certainly
impossible.
He's run a very strong campaign. He's driven the debate in many ways. He'll continue to do that, and he can win. And he'll win some primaries moving forward. And as you know, sometimes at the end of those primaries, you have these, to borrow a phrase, buyer's remorse victories as well.
We got to take a quick break. More of our conversation as we continue to look at the counting of the votes in Alaska. We'll bring those results as soon as we can.
Still one contest outstanding tonight in Anchorage, Alaska. I want to go to Paul Verkaman right now. The Alaska Republican caucus is still underway. Paul, over there, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Well, this presidential preference poll is over, and now begins the counting. And look over here, Wolf, it does not get any more old school than this. They are literally stacking the ballots here in Anchorage. And I can tell you just by looking at the stack, a very unscientific poll at that, the Rubio, Trump, and Cruz stacks here in District 24 in West Anchorage are very even. And as only can happen in Alaska, we should give some sort of golf clap to Eric Burney, who is doing all this counting despite being shot in the left shoulder area with a rather large caliber bullet and survived it. This was while deer hunting. They're working to try to count these ballots as fast as they can. Here are some extremely raw numbers from other parts of Alaska. Carson with 59, Cruz with 321, Kasich with 87, Rubio with 208, and Trump with 347. And it bears repeating, 4 larger districts. You can see the piles of ballots here in West Anchorage. They're working feverishly to go ahead and count all of these up. They were handling things extremely well, but they believe they might have had 50% greater turnout here in Anchorage than expected. It was extremely brisk when I was in Wasilla. They also had massive lines compared to 2012. Just an awesome show of force, and many people, as these chairmen have been telling me, and other department district heads, they've been telling me that a lot of people switched Democrat to vote Republican just tonight, or they were independent and went Republican just for tonight, which they can do in Alaska.
Paul Verkaman, thanks very much. We'll wait for them to count those ballots the old-fashioned way, by hand. Jake, let's go back to you.
Well, we do expect that Donald Trump will likely have a good night in Alaska. It's a state where perhaps the most famous politician or former politician, Sarah Palin, endorsed him very strongly.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think Alaska's sensibility is inherently not really liking Washington and not really liking the establishment. Exactly, renegade. Yeah. Although, you know, a lot of establishment figures have historically represented Alaska and done pretty well.
Sure.
By Alaska. Senator Ted Stevens, the late Ted Stevens, brought a lot of money back, and others as well. But yes, and we should also note that Alaska is interesting. It's fascinating to look at, especially when we get to see real democracy at work. But it's, as tonight goes, it's only 28 delegates.
Right. It's a relatively small state in population. Let's bring in David Chalian, our political director. I'm really curious about how perhaps the major issue in the Republican race, that of illegal immigration, how it played out in tonight's voting.
So, Jake, one of the questions we ask in our exit polls is, what should be done with illegal immigrants working here in the United States? Should they be offered legal status, or they should be deported to their home country? Obviously, you know, Donald Trump has made this issue front and center in the campaign. Look at this. In Virginia, 59% of the voters tonight say those illegal immigrants working in the U.S. should be offered legal status. Only 36% say they should be deported to their home country, as Donald Trump wants to do. And remember, Donald Trump won Virginia. Take a look at Texas. Texas shows us 47% believe that they should be offered legal status versus 43% who say they should be deported to his home country. Of course, Ted Cruz won Texas. And again, more folks are on the opposite side of this issue than where Ted Cruz is, despite the fact that he won there tonight. And now look at Alabama. This is the only state in all the states that this question has been asked, Jake, including New Hampshire and South Carolina as well, where more people say that these illegal immigrants should be sent home, deported to their home country, than say that should be offered legal status. Here in Alabama, 50% say deport to the home country, 45% say offered legal status. So although it's been this red hot issue in the campaign, and although Donald Trump is dominating this campaign on a message of deporting illegal immigrants here, that is not what the Republican primary electorate has actually been telling us they want to do across many of the states this year so far.
Very interesting, David Chalian. Thanks so much. We have called 11 contests on the Democratic side and 10 on the Republican side. There is one outstanding, the Alaska Republican Caucus. We will bring you that information when we come back after this very quick break.
A lot of patience. You know, I'm really intrigued with what Dana Bash reported earlier, is that people will be approaching Ben Carson to drop out of the presidential field to run for the Senate race in Florida for Marco Rubio's open Senate seat. That to me, you know, if I'm reading the tea leaves, says that people are thinking that Ted Cruz is the candidate, because if we think about it, Carson gets out, that probably helps Ted Cruz the most. I don't know if Ben Carson is going to do that or not, but I think that's a growing recognition that among the establishment, if these are establishment types pushing Ben Carson to drop out and do this, that Ted Cruz is the vehicle to do this. One dynamic that I think has changed in the race for Donald Trump, and Jeffrey may want to talk about this, is the growing recognition that he is not the best person to take on Hillary Clinton. We saw the events of the last week, the last CNN Republican debate where he was more unhinged than he's been, the comments about the KKK coming out. Fair or not, that was a big part of the discussion. And there's been polling showing that he doesn't match up well against Hillary Clinton, because more than anything, Republicans want to win in November. Donald Trump's brand is winning.
Do you believe that he doesn't match up well against Hillary Clinton?
No, I don't. You know, one of the things I was looking at tonight on here was a Gallup poll from December of 1979 that had Jimmy Carter beating Ronald Reagan 60 to 32%. And, you know, the whole dynamics of that, the internals and all of that, were just terrible for Ronald Reagan. And a year later, Reagan was president-elect, having carried 44 states. So absolutely, I don't believe that.
Kevin, do you buy Amanda's belief that establishment figures, whoever it may be, wanting to approach, based on Dana Bash's reporting, wanting to approach Ben Carson about perhaps dropping out running, is an acknowledgement that Rubio is the best candidate, or is it just a sign of they just want to try to whittle down the field?
I think they want to. I think that's right. I think it's the latter, that they want to whittle down the field. I think Carson's the first step.
Right.
I don't believe he has a monolithic block of transferable votes that's going to, dramatically impact the trajectory of the race. But I think many of these candidates, if you look at Cruz and Kasich and Rubio, they all have figures that can influence them, or they're very close to, that can in some way have them look at this race in a new way. And all of them right now are talking to them in some way and trying to get them to look at how they can unify the party, because increasingly every step of the way we see people get more and more worried about Donald Trump. The question is whether or not the fundamentals are so set right now that there's much we can do right now.
You know,
There's much we can
Kasich
do.
denies, for example, that Mitt Romney tried to get him to drop out. In fact, he says he got an email from Romney after the last debate saying what a great job he did. I think the establishment would like the field to winnow down, and I think most of them would like.
You know what it is, Gloria?
Rubio.
Part of it is there is no one central dominating figure, and
Exactly.
we've seen this. This is good for the party when parties tend to have their power paradigms, diminished, and more of there's more grassroots
Mm-hmm.
voices. But in this case, where there's a power lever that can be pulled, it's simply not there.
One thing Amanda said was that more than anything, Republicans want to win in November. But you look at these exit polls, and there's absolutely no evidence of that. In fact, electability is the least desirable. I mean, that's the quality.
One of the reasons for that, I think, David, is
they see that Hillary Clinton is so vulnerable. I've talked among Republicans. We feel that this is the election where Hillary Clinton is so weak, the Democratic farm team is so depleted. We can get whatever we want. I think they're overreaching, going with the Trump, but I think that's why electability.
Hillary Clinton will have the highest negatives over the Democratic nominee that we'll ever see, except that Donald Trump will have much higher. So it's going to be almost like this race to see who hits the bottom last.
But there's a serious point here about electability. Falls to the bottom of the list of people's concerns. Shared values, is another one. Shaking things up, telling it like it is.
Too many
about
Republicans.
change. These are the qualities that are dominating the choice of Republicans. So they're not making a choice based on who they think. Marco Rubio dominates that category about electability, and he is not soaring in this race.
Too many Republicans are saying.
One at a time, Jeffrey.
Too many Republicans, remember, being sold on the Mitt Romney is electable, John McCain is electable, Gerald Ford is electable, Bob Dole is electable. None of them were electable.
Bill?
Well, I was just going to, there is a problem with that, however, which is if you put somebody up there who is not electable, you're going to lose everything. And
unless, of course, they really are, but you just can't see it.
It's great to get the message out, right? It's great to really feel good that you get your guy who's anti-stuff, anti-everything. But if he can't win, it's just a waste of time.
I think if you ask Democratic operatives and strategists who they would most want to run against this election, it's Ted Cruz. Hands down, no question. Donald Trump goes in with huge negatives, but he has shown himself to be an immensely talented politician who has wiped the floor with some of the best figures in the Republican Party. He has an ability to bring out new voters, change the paradigm, has huge vulnerabilities and flaws, but Ted Cruz would be a Democratic choice.
And the reason being is because Ted Cruz fundamentally doesn't change the map. I mean, it's still the same 2008 map, still the same 2012 map, the same terrain. I mean, Donald Trump, at least in theory, although I don't think this can be proven to be true, but at least in theory, plays in New Jersey, plays in Pennsylvania, he plays in Ohio, whereas we talked before, he may have a little bit more of a shot. He plays in Michigan. But Ted Cruz fundamentally, and I was, at one point I said Donald Trump is probably the favorite candidate we want to run against. But I think it's actually shifting to Ted Cruz. I mean, I think Democrats across the country don't really fear either. But Ted Cruz is the candidate that is easily defeatable.
Look, there's an immutable reality about our politics, okay? We've been becoming and our country, we're becoming more diverse each election. I've said this before, we had 26% minority vote in 2008, 28 in 2012. It's going to be 30 or 31% in 2016. No party is going to win a national election if they get wiped out among that close to a third of the electorate. And that is a fundamental problem for the Republican Party if they nominate a candidate. And I think both Cruz and Trump stand to have this problem, who cannot make inroads with those constituents.
And you hit the nail on the head, because one of the things, and this is the problem with the Republican conversation, this is what drives Kevin Madden mad, I'm sure, is that when you have these antagonistic just diatribes coming from Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, we spent the majority of the week talking about the front runner of the Republican Party disavowing the KKK. I mean, that was the level of the discussion. And so when you're talking about these minority groups, every single election cycle, Reince Priebus, he goes on this whole postmortem where we're going to reach out to minorities, where we're going to do better with Hispanics, and we're going to do better with African Americans. You can't do that fundamentally with Donald Trump at the top of the ticket.
And you have
exit
poll after exit poll showing that the category in which Donald Trump does the worst of the Republican candidates is shares your values. Because Donald Trump's candidacy is not about values, it's about a revolution, a mission, a takeover of the Republican Party, and that's very different.
Although to that point, if tonight, I mean, in those polls in most of these states, it was anger and dissatisfaction, which were overwhelming.
It's a driving force, but it's not your value, your personal
telling it like it is.
Right.
It's a you know, I don't want to be coarse, but you know, it's his own version of a digital campaign. He's kind of giving the finger to the establishment and everybody, and a very angry party, and people are flocking to him because of it.
So they don't
I just
care
have to
if
say
he
something.
shares
I've been
the
sitting
values.
here absorbing what my Democratic friends of this panel have been saying, that they would rather run against Ted Cruz because they think Ted Cruz is more beatable in a general election than Donald Trump, who in the same breath we talk about, is dominating the headlines this week because he wouldn't disavow the KKK. I mean, this is madness.
about the map.
Ted Cruz won Texas with 40% of the Hispanic vote. He has a way to do that. I think he's certainly stronger than Donald Trump, and I would feel a lot better about that.
We've got a key race alert. I want to go to Wolf Blitzer. Wolf?
All right, Anderson, we do have a key race alert. Let's take a look at the last contest. Still outstanding. Alaska right now, 6% of the vote is in. Donald Trump is ahead, 34.2%. Ted Cruz in second place, 29.9%. Marco Rubio in third place, 18.4%. Very early. Remember, Alaska, 28 delegates at stake. I want to go back to Paul Verkammen. He's in Anchorage, one of the polling places, one of the caucus sites out there. Are they done where you are right now, Paul?
No. Wolf, not even close. And in fact, as we've been talking, they've been counting as we go. And excuse me if you don't mind, this is what it looks like. This is the official ballot, and this is now District 22 in West Anchorage, another of the more brisk districts in Alaska. Don't forget, 4 years ago, they had 3 total votes in another district, Barrow. But here we go. We've got Marco Rubio with 126 here in District 22. We have Donald Trump with 233. We've got Ben Carson with 52 and Ted Cruz with 187. Kasich with 33. And again, this is District 22 in West Anchorage. And momentarily, if you look just over here, District 24 also being counted up, and as soon as they have any of these raw numbers for us, they will give them to us, but they are still in the process of counting. As we said, they were absolutely astounded by the large voter turnout throughout Alaska. Reports from all over the state, people voting Republican who otherwise were independents, and some of them Democrats who are allowed to do this in this presidential preference poll. Back to you now.
All right, Paul Verkammen in Anchorage, Alaska for us. Donald Trump slightly ahead, Anderson, but it's still very, very early there.
And David Axelrod, I mean, we hear yet again high voter turnout on the Republican side. We've talked about this a little bit before, but how concerned are you about the so-called enthusiasm gap in a general election?
Well, I mean, I think I think the Democratic Party should be concerned about that. And I think as I've said before, I think it's a natural thing. One of the reasons why parties don't win third terms is their voters become a bit complacent, and the other party is aroused, and that's what's happened here. But then you have the added dimension of a Donald Trump, and I think the saving grace maybe is if he's the nominee of the party. I think Cruz has a polarizing impact as well, but if he's the nominee of the Republican Party, I think you're going to see key Democratic constituencies very much motivated to come out.
And Bakari, that's your point. I mean, Paul Begala several days ago said this is what keeps him up at night as a Democrat. You actually think the presence of Donald Trump, that's what the general election candidate, that's going to drive Democratic enthusiasm.
I think that Donald Trump is the best GOTV mechanism or get out the vote mechanism that Democrats could ever have. I mean, especially you talk about Virginia, you talk about North Carolina, you talk about Texas. I mean, I'm not under any illusion Democrats will win Texas, but you have these large swaths of minority voters that we already have ready-made ads for Donald Trump right now. I mean, it's not hard to develop an image of Donald Trump disrespecting some ethnic group. I mean, that is not a far-fetched ideal. And so I think that is something that the Republican Party is having a lot of fear with, because not only does it affect the presidential ticket, but it also affects Rob Portman versus Ted Strickland. It also affects the Senate map. And it just changes a whole lot of dynamics that I think the Republican establishment is taking a step back and saying, how do we brace ourselves for this? We've never seen anything like it.
You know, Anderson, if I could say, I agree that I think Donald Trump would be the best GOTV vehicle for the Democrats. I also think he's the best GOTV vehicle for Republicans. I think it's been proven in the primaries.
No doubt.
Now, I've been spending a lot of time tonight thinking, how are Democrats going to run against Donald Trump? Because it looks like he's going to be the nominee. And I think Democrats take it for granted that it's going to be easy to roll over Donald
They're
Trump.
making a big mistake.
Huge mistake.
Because there's a lot of Republicans who made that same mistake.
Yeah, he's got a lot of cross-party appeal to blue-collar workers, to independents, to first-time voters. He's brought them out in the primaries. He'll bring them out in the general.
And he has the best economic message that any Republican candidate has had since Reagan. He is running as a populist, reformer, champion of the working class. The next Republican president will have an economic message more like Donald Trump than Paul Ryan or Mitt Romney in 2012.
Look, I agree. Just real quick, I agree that Democrats need to be very careful what they wish for here. And if we look at some of the states, places like Ohio, places like that Florida that had to flip, he could have an appeal to a lot of those blue-collar, lower-income white voters that are going to be key in some of the turnout areas of those states. But I think that what Democrats will probably learn, which is that the Republicans learned too late, is that when you define Donald Trump early and you sort of cut off his supply lines to those populist demographics, then or those demographics that are motivated by populist economics, you can have a fighting chance.
I think that's right.
The new is whether or not you can introduce any new information.
That is also why this Democratic race is so interesting, because I believe there's going to become a point relatively soon on the Democratic side where both candidates, because I'm of the belief that Bernie Sanders doesn't need to get out the race either, but both candidates can then begin to pivot and begin to define Donald Trump. And I think you'll begin to see that a lot earlier from the Democrats than you did.
Let's talk about Donald Trump and getting out the vote on the Republican side. I want to pick up on something that Bill was mentioning. I'm not so sure that he is great for GOTV on the Republican side because there's people like me, the conservative, maybe purists that people are.
Are you going to come out? Are you voting for Hillary Clinton?
There's a whole thing saying never Trump. I have a very hard time thinking of myself going and pulling the lever for someone who doesn't respect the First Amendment, that calls women bimbos. I have a daughter. I can't vote for a president who would potentially call my daughter a bimbo. Those are real concerns. Now, I don't think I'm going to vote Hillary. I'd probably write somebody in. I'd probably work for a third-party candidate. But for Republican women who maybe aren't as hard line as me, I think it's very hard for them to pull
What
that
we're
lever.
leaving out of this conversation entirely are Hillary and her negatives. I mean, this is somebody who's been on the public scene for, 30 years or more. They all know her. I keep going back to this poll that we had this summer where I guess it was a Quinnipiac poll, where they asked people to volunteer, their impressions of her, and the top word was liar, and the second one was dishonest.
I mentioned that earlier, though.
But Donald Trump is not going to be running in a vacuum.
I mentioned this earlier. The only way that you could really put yourself in peril of not beating Hillary Clinton would be to nominate somebody who had higher negatives. And guess what? Donald Trump has higher negatives than Hillary Clinton.
And Donald Trump's actually, Hillary Clinton's been defined since 1992. This is nothing new. She's been in the public spotlight since then. Who hasn't been defined in this political process has been Donald Trump.
The one thing that I think Democrats should learn from this experience watching this primary campaign, if Donald Trump is the nominee, is that you have to put maximum pressure on Donald Trump from the beginning. He's played this entire game on the other side of the field, on other people's side of the field. He's always on offense. He's got people on defense. And I suspect that you're going to see a very aggressive campaign to make him defend.
There is, to David's point, Gloria, there is an advantage that whoever the Democratic candidate is will have against Donald Trump, assuming he's the candidate, is that they have learned the lessons that a lot of Republicans failed to learn early on because they have been able to watch what worked and what did not work against Donald Trump.
Well, nothing worked, right? Nothing worked. And the Democrats, as David was, the Republicans, as David was saying, just thought Donald Trump was going to implode on his own, and he didn't do that. And if Hillary Clinton is running against Donald Trump, a woman running against Donald Trump, I think there are some very potent arguments she can make in a different way, and it's very different. He's going to have to adjust his campaigning for Hillary Clinton, I would say.
We got to get another quick break in. Our coverage continues. We'll have more from our panelists as we continue to look at the votes being counted in Alaska, the last state we are waiting for. Details ahead.
They're still counting the ballots in the last contest of this Super Tuesday. It's now Wednesday here in Washington, but in Alaska, it's still Tuesday. Let's go to Paul Verkammen, who's on the scene for 7% of the vote is in. Paul, Donald Trump is ahead, but not by much, 35.1%, 29.6% for Ted Cruz, 18.3% for Marco Rubio. You had a chance to speak with a prominent figure there in Alaska.
That's right. Earlier this evening, Wolf, Sarah Palin was voting up in Wasilla, where, as we said, it was rather brisk. And I asked Palin point blank, if Trump were to win, and you know she supports him, how does she think he would fare against Hillary Clinton? Let's take a listen.
Oh, Trump, because people they know that the status quo has got to go. And Hillary, of course, has been part of the status quo. What cracks me up about these politicians, typical politicians, and thank God Trump isn't a politician, these guys and these gals who've been part of the problem for all these years, trying to fool America into thinking that they're going to be now the solution, they've had their chance. They've had their chance to implement solutions that we need to, as we face all these tremendous challenges, national security-wise and economically-wise. And instead, they have really been perpetuating the problems for them now to say, oh, well, give me another chance and now I'll do something right. No, we're not that stupid. It's time for somebody new energy, new blood in there, new people who are independent, and as I say, beholden only to the voters.
And I also asked Palin, if Trump were to win, would you somehow want to be part of his administration? And she said right now she's focused on being a mom and driving kids to basketball and the rest of that, Wolf.
All right, Paul Verkammen, we'll check back with you. Only 7% of the vote is in. Trump maintaining a slight lead. Did you like her sweatshirt?
Her sweatshirt says, I heart homies with extra chromies. It's a reference to Down syndrome, and obviously she has a son, Trig, with Down syndrome, just in case anybody was wondering what that sweatshirt was all about. But more significantly, I think you have in former Governor Palin the attitude we're seeing reflected in these exit polls of people don't want any Republican voters, don't want anybody from inside the Washington, inside the system. They want a complete outsider. And as the governor said, the status quo has got to go. That's what we're seeing in the exit polls, and that's Governor Palin.
Sounds like a bumper sticker. You're onto something there,
catchy.
Tapper.
It's catchy.
But, look, the bottom line is she is very supportive of Donald Trump now. She was an early supporter of Ted Cruz when he ran for Senate against the establishment figure down there. But now she says, you know what? He was fine for that role, for the Senate, but not so much for the presidency. I actually think it's interesting that she made a very big splash with Donald Trump in Iowa, and I don't think she's been on the trail with him since.
No, well, she did a few states after that, after the Iowa endorsement.
Right, exactly, after that
and then
run.
And then went back home. It is interesting. But also, I mean, we haven't really seen anybody who's endorsed Donald Trump, or anyone really for that matter, stay with him throughout. The interesting exception being
Chris Christie
this evening, stepping out and introducing Donald Trump almost as if he were Donald Trump's vice president introducing the president. Wolf.
She was pretty enthusiastic for Donald Trump, though, and she's pretty loyal to him right now.
That's right. And for anybody wondering if she got a position with the Trump administration, if there were to be one, she said she would like to be Secretary of Energy, and then she would like to close the Department of Energy.
Stand by, guys. I want to walk over to John King right now. John, so Alaska, we're still waiting for Alaska. Donald Trump has a slight lead over there. This is the last contest of the night. It's a very, very Republican state since it became a state, 1959. It's only voted for a Democrat once in a general presidential election, and that was in 1964 for LBJ.
I don't think there's any question this will be read in November. The question is what happens tonight. And for Donald Trump, it's looking very good right now, but only 12% of the vote in. Paul Verkammen's up there keeping an eye on him as they count him. It's a caucus system. Takes a while. A lot of rural areas, too, waiting for votes to come in. But as you watch it, if you assume it stays with Donald Trump, as he has the lead in there right now, this is a map that looks very impressive after 15 contests for Donald Trump. Man who's never run for public office before, who's essentially launched a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, and 15 contests in, he is succeeding. A long way to go in this race, but if you look at the race right now, yes, Ted Cruz can claim his home state, Oklahoma and Iowa. Marco Rubio gets his win finally on the winner's board tonight, which keeps him in the race maybe. lessens the pressure to get out because he can say he won. But the delegate count for Rubio is very disappointing tonight. Down in Texas, he's getting zipped. Didn't meet the threshold to get delegates. A couple other states where that's the case as well, Wolf. And you see the beginning of this here. If you look at the Republican race going forward, at the end of the day, we're going to be somewhere in this ballpark, we project delegate-wise. This may be a little generous to Marco Rubio. Earlier in the week, we thought he would pick up some delegates in Texas. We thought he would pick up some other delegates here in the South. We're not done with our final count yet. This 97 might actually be generous to Marco Rubio, and Donald Trump may move up a little bit from this. But roughly, we're going to be in this ballpark, which, again, is a Trump lead, and he has momentum going into the next contest. This is why Ted Cruz is saying unite around me, but these two guys tonight say, no way, we're still in. And Dr. Carson's not on our board. We can only fit 4 on here. He says he has fewer delegates. He says he's not getting out either. So the congested field continues as we move on through the rest of March. I'm going to put all these up. They light up as fully as Donald Trump winning them all. If that were to be the case, if Trump ran out the field in March, you see what he would do. Because we get into some winner-take-all territory, he would pull it open. But remember, Ohio is on March 15th. Governor Kasich says he's staying at least through then. Doesn't matter who you do second, third, or fourth. It's winner-take-all. This is the defining moment now for Marco Rubio. He's trailing in the polls. Some polls show him way down. Other polls show it a little bit closer. Rubio has to win in Florida. I'm going to give it to him here for the sake of this argument, just to show you if he wins in Florida and if Kasich wins in Ohio. If Donald Trump keeps winning everywhere else, it's hard to find a state, given his performance across the rest of the South so far, states that you might have thought weeks ago or a few months ago would be for Ted Cruz. It's hard to see that right now. Maybe he'll pick one up. Maybe, let's say, for example, Ted Cruz can come into Louisiana and win there. Even if you picked a few states and gave them away, look what happens here. Donald Trump starts to pull away. So you can't do this one state at a time, Wolf. If you're going to stop Donald Trump, you need to change the arc of this race and change it now.
All right, we're not going away. We're still waiting for Alaska. We'll see what happens there earlier tonight. Donald Trump spoke in Palm Beach, Florida, at his Mar-a-Lago club. Here's what he had to say, among other things.
I want to congratulate Ted on the winning of Texas. He worked hard on it, and I know how hard he worked, actually. And so I congratulate Ted Cruz on that win. That was an excellent win. I know it was a very tough night for Marco Rubio. He had a tough night, but he worked hard. He spent a lot of money. He is a lightweight, as I've said many times before.
The results are beginning to come in from the Republican caucuses in Alaska. Take a look at this, how close it is between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, with 19% of the vote now in. Trump has 35.7%, Cruz 34.1%. But look, it's only a difference of 69 votes, 1,543 for Trump, 1,474 for Cruz. Rubio's in third place, only 14.9%, 642 votes. Let's update you right now on where it stands on the Republican side. The wins for Donald Trump first. He has carried 7 states: Georgia, Alabama, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Virginia, Arkansas, and Vermont. Ted Cruz has carried 2 states, Texas and Oklahoma. Marco Rubio has carried 1 state, Minnesota. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton has carried 7 states: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Bernie Sanders has carried 4 states: Vermont, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Minnesota. These are the states that the Democratic senator from Vermont has carried. Hillary Clinton has carried 7 states. It's a fascinating situation here on the Democratic side specifically, Jake, because there's a war going on. There's a fight going on. It's by no means over.
Absolutely not. And earlier we were wondering whether or not Bernie Sanders was going to have a night where he won more than his home state of Vermont, just because he had come out after he won Vermont, and we thought that was unusual. But look at that, 4 big victories for him. Of course, Hillary Clinton, the big winner on the Democratic side. But I have to say, Wolf, the big takeaway this evening is not just that Donald Trump dominated in 7 contests, possibly 8. It is, if you look at the turnout numbers of how many Democrats are turning out to vote, how many Republicans are turning out to vote, across the board in Democratic primaries and caucuses, it's down. People are not voting. They're not as enthusiastic. And across the board in Republican contests, it is way up. People are very enthusiastic. In fact, in at least 3 of these states, records were set. Oklahoma, Virginia, and I believe Tennessee. Records were set. It's astounding, and this is not the first time we've said this. This is a trend. And if Democrats are not careful, they are going to lose this presidential election.
That's right. And look, I mean, there's no question, love them or hate them, a lot of the new voters coming out on the Republican side, they want to influence the Trump factor, right? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any question about that. But there are a lot, I mean, look, I've met them on the campaign trail. You've met them on the campaign trail. There are a lot of people who have been completely disaffected, who like Donald Trump's message. They like the idea that finally, from their perspective, somebody who's not a regular politician, who has done things in his life, can come in potentially and change the way things are done. You know, we'll see if that happens. But the other takeaway quickly from the Republican side is how up in the air still it is with Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio.
Right.
Marco Rubio, I mean, we don't know exactly how many delegates he's going to get tonight. Obviously, he only had one win, Minnesota, but it doesn't look like he's going to do that well. And it is a delegate race right now. And if he's in it for the long haul to try to, you know, keep Donald Trump on his toes and keep him out there to go through all of the races until he gets to that magic 1,237 to win, you know, he's got to have a lot of money and a lot of stamina behind him to do that.
And we wondered if we were going to get any more clarity on the Republican race, and in fact, the answer is no, because Ted Cruz got 2 victories, Marco Rubio got 1. John Kasich had already said he didn't think he was going to do well. He's waiting for the big Ohio contest. It looks as though the non-Trump vote, whether that's 65 or 80% of those voting, whatever it is, the non-Trump vote is going to remain splintered among these candidates.
That's exactly right. And so on that side of the sort of equation, there isn't clarity. But there is clarity as to who's the front runner. I mean, there's no question about that.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't before tonight, but even and especially after tonight with this, you know, almost half of the delegates needed to win at stake. He obviously isn't going to get them all or even close to that, but he's really, really far ahead.
And the winner-take-all states are coming up. They're right there, Anderson Cooper, and Donald Trump is just collecting all these contests one after the other and heading to the winner-take-all states.
And we heard from both front runners and really all the candidates tonight. We put together kind of a compilation of some of what they all said tonight. Let's play that and we'll talk about it with our panel.
I'm a unifier. I know people are going to find that a little bit hard to believe, but believe me, I am a unifier. Once we get all of this finished, I'm going to go after one person. That's Hillary Clinton, on the assumption she's allowed to run, which is a big assumption. I don't know that she's going to be allowed to run. And I think that's frankly going to be an easy race. Watched Hillary's speech, and she's talking about wages have been poor and everything's doing badly, but we're going to make it. She's been there for so long. I mean, if she hasn't straightened it out by now, she's not going to straighten it out in the next 4 years. It's just going to become worse and worse. She wants to make America whole again, and I'm trying to figure out what is that all about. Make America great again is going to be much better than making America whole again.
Donald Trump has pledged to expand Obamacare into socialized medicine, with the federal government controlling and rationing your health care. As president, I will repeal every word of Obamacare. America shouldn't have a president whose words would make you embarrassed if your children repeated them. Our president should make us all proud, should inspire hope in all of us. We can nominate a Washington dealmaker, profane and vulgar, who has a lifelong pattern of using government power for personal gain.
Thank you all so much. What a Super Tuesday. You know, all across our country today, Democrats voted to break down barriers so we can all rise together. And I am so delighted to be here with you in Florida. I congratulate Senator Sanders on his strong showing and campaigning, and I'm grateful to all of you who voted for me, to the volunteers and organizers. I know you've worked your hearts out. It's clear tonight that the stakes in this election have never been higher, and the rhetoric we're hearing on the other side has never been lower. Trying to divide America between us and them is wrong, and we're not going to let it work. Now this campaign moves forward to the Crescent City, the Motor City, and beyond. We're going to work for every vote, and we will need all of you to keep volunteering, contributing, doing everything you can, talking to your friends and neighbors, because this country belongs to all of us, not just those at the top.
This is not a general election. It's not winner take all. If you get 52%, you get 48%, you roughly end up with the same amount of delegates in a state. By the end of tonight, we are going to win many hundreds of delegates. We want to win in every part of the country, that goes without saying. But it does say something and means so much to me that the people who know me best, the people who knew me before I was elected, who knew me as mayor, knew me as congressman, and know me as senator, have voted so strongly to put us in the White House. Thank you so much.
Bill Press, do you agree with what Bakari said, that he believes they're sort of both going to start to focus more on Donald Trump? Both.
Yes, I think we're going to see that for sure. Bernie Sanders mentioned Donald Trump in his remarks, and I didn't hear all of Hillary, but I think she may have as well. She has been this past week.
Right,
I mean, it's certainly going to be easier to unite the two Democratic candidates than it is all of these Republican candidates once the primary is over. And one thing that's going to unite them even before that is I think they're going to see them focusing their attacks on Donald Trump, probably starting
now.
This double-barrel shotgun Sunday night.
Sunday night, the debate. Dan, do you agree with that?
I do. If Sanders were to come out double-barreled against Hillary Clinton this weekend during the debate, I think a lot of the party would become very concerned about that. And you would start to see a movement of party figures who have not yet either endorsed Hillary Clinton or called on Sanders to get out of the race or stop campaigning against her to do so. Because if people see him endangering her general election prospects, I think that would change the dynamic.
But how does Bernie Sanders sort of explain staying in the race if he's not drawing contrast between him and Hillary Clinton?
Well, he's going to win contests going forward. He's probably going to win 2 contests this weekend. He's going to do well in these caucus states. Hillary Clinton won a lot of contests after Obama had basically had an insurmountable delegate lead in 2008. But there was a moment when it became clear that Obama would be the nominee, when she stopped attacking Obama and focused her fire on motivating her supporters and focusing her fire on John McCain.
The question is, at what point are you there? I'm not sure Bernie Sanders, in his own mind and in the minds of his strategists, is going to be there by the time they debate this weekend. You've got Michigan, you've got these Midwestern states. I think after March 15th, if she does very well in those states, that will be the time for him to consider how he wants to go forward. But I'm not sure that everyone's going to lay down their swords.
It's a question, of tone and ramping. I think there'll be contrast, but is he calling on her to release the transcripts of her speech? I think will be the test as to whether he's there or not.
I think we may hear less of that, honestly, although he has called for her to release the transcripts. But I think you're going to continue to see Bernie Sanders contrast his record on the war in Iraq, for example, contrast his record on Wall Street, and all the rest with Hillary Clinton, because he considers that fair game, and that's his entire candidacy. But whether he's going to make the attacks a little bit more personal, as he has done on the issue of her transcripts and her speeches to Goldman Sachs, I think we'll probably hear a little bit less of that.
I think it's a matter of focus, I guess is what I'm saying, and where the main focus of his remarks or his attacks, and he's certainly going to continue to campaign like hell. He's going to continue with that message, continue to try to get new people in and to bring the young people out, and continue to try to win some primaries.
Now, what he hasn't done is he's won He's won 5 contests now. He hasn't won in a state with significant minority populations, and he hasn't figured out how to pick that lock. And time is running out.
And that was my next point, X. And thanks for bringing it up. I mean, this was a theme coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire, and it's one that I hammered home then. I mean, still the test was, could Bernie Sanders, even when he spends the resources and voters get to know him, could he win those minority blocks? And tonight there was a hint of a question by some, not by many, but was Hillary Clinton strong with Latino voters coming out of Nevada? Because there was some question. Well, she went to Texas and proved her strength there. She reasserted her strength with African American voters. And yes, Bernie Sanders did win states, but the question is, when will Bernie Sanders win a state that reflects the Democratic Party? Now, Bernie Sanders has a message, and Bernie Sanders has a very strong message. And Bernie Sanders has a message that is mobilizing voters, so he has to stay in the race. But I do think that there is a time when you begin to frame Donald Trump, and Democrats have an ace in the hole because they have the bully. They have the bully who's in the pen, and he's at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And his job on the campaign trail when he comes out is going to be to blister Donald Trump. And I think that he will do that at a particular point. Not yet, but he will. And I think that, and we actually have a power broker, somebody who can bring these two factions together, which he will do eventually as well.
Which you don't have on the Republican side, by
Correct.
the way, because who can bring Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio together, or
Donald Trump against him. Against Donald Trump. I've said before, I truly think the silver lining, if I can find one, of Donald Trump rising, is that he will force the party to recognize, go deep into its heart and soul to find out what it's for. Because when I look at Donald Trump, a guy who has suggested that 9/11 is a conspiracy, who was for the bank bailouts, who is for a form of socialized health care, who is for the stimulus, who has not been there for conservatives on any major policy issue since the rise of Barack Obama. I cannot see that this is what the rise of the Tea Party and the historic margins that Republicans have enjoyed from 2010 to 2014 add up to Donald Trump.
Sounds more like a silver medal lining.
We got to take a short break. Our coverage continues. We're waiting the votes in Alaska. We'll be right back. Just call it.
One remaining contest tonight, the Alaska Republican caucuses. Let's take a look at the latest numbers that have come in. About a quarter of the vote is now in, 23%. Look at how close it is between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. Only 55 votes separate Trump from Cruz. Trump is ahead with 34.5%. Cruz is in second place, 33.4%. But look at this, 1,812 for Trump, 1,757 for Cruz. Marco Rubio distant third place in Alaska right now, 16.2%, only 851 votes. They're still counting the votes in Alaska. Lots more to go. This is the final contest of the night. Big nights clearly for Hillary Clinton. She won 7. Big night for Donald Trump. He won 7.
And he might win 8. We'll see.
He wins 8. That's very good.
He didn't run the table, but he did pretty damn well. You know, it's interesting. CNN used Microsoft Pulse to take a national poll this evening of the moments of the frontrunners' speeches that resonated most strongly with the public. Here is the part of Hillary Clinton's victory speech this evening that the American people whom were polled found most compelling.
Every child in America should have a great school and a great teacher, no matter what zip code they live in.
That was about children. Let's see what resonated most with voters from Donald Trump's speech.
But we have to rebuild our country. Our country is going to hell, and people don't understand that. And Hillary Clinton doesn't have a clue. She can't do that.
Interesting. So Hillary Clinton was talking about making sure every child has a good teacher and a good classroom, and Donald Trump's message a little bit more edgy. Just a little, just a smidge.
Just a little?
Yeah.
Understatement of the night?
So we got to get our country back, and talking about how Hillary Clinton can't do it. So the part of the speech of Donald Trump's that the voters found most compelling was in part a negative part. You know?
Right. And it actually kind of, you know, if we get to the point down the road where the two of them are going after each other, I think that's kind of an interesting window into what we might see. She's going to be talking about kind of the compassion, the kindness, you know, all of the things that she's going to be discussing, all of the things that she's done. And Donald Trump is going to be saying, oh, I don't think so, Hillary.
I have a feeling it's going to be plenty negative on both sides. Clinton and Trump, I think it's going to be what the kids call a bloodbath, Anderson.
It's going to be like the opening scene in Terminator. It's like a war, just scorched earth, I think, for a long time. Let's get just a couple final thoughts on the night. Jeffrey, from what you've seen.
Well, Donald Trump had a good night. I mean, he's made a lot of progress tonight. I think he's going to continue to make progress. I think that, you know, if this were an arm wrestling contest that we always see in the movies, I think we're, you know, right about here. And I think he's going to do very well. They don't have their act together on the other side. I mean, they can't settle on one person. And the person that would be obvious to settle on is Ted Cruz, and they're not going to do that.
Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, revisit an idea I mentioned way earlier is that if this is a two-man race between Cruz and Trump, we have to view them not as establishment insurgent candidates anymore, but as two different reactions to the presidency of Barack Obama. On one hand, you can have Donald Trump, who doubles down on, you know, a brute force, almost tyrannical, I fear, way of politics, or Ted Cruz, who presents a more measured return to limited government as a way of countering the errors conservatives view of the era of Obama.
You know, it's interesting. I think not a whole lot has changed in the last week. I mean, I think we're seeing Trump's momentum is still what's shaping the dynamics on the Republican side. The fact that the other candidates really don't feel like they were ever given a reason to get out. And, you know, the fundamentals are still the same. And that is, you know, I think, and we have these other contests coming up. There really isn't this long.
You think by March 15th, things will be clear?
But look, by March 15th, March 15th is a must-win for Marco Rubio. I think if there's one thing that I've found encouraging from their campaign tonight is that they are absolutely embracing those type of expectations. They know that they can't manage that.
Should just quickly point out Ted Cruz has pulled ahead in Alaska, 35 to 33%, 31% of the vote in. Bakari?
Well, I think tonight reaffirmed again what we already knew, that Hillary Clinton stretched out her front-runner status a little bit. But I still think that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are healthy for each other. I think they're healthy for the party. I think the exchange of ideas is very good. I mean, I'm sorry, Amanda. I'm sorry, Kevin. But Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. We just have to say that. There you go, Jeffrey. And I think that Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump is going to be an epic battle for the soul of this country. And I don't say that lightly. I think that a lot of Democrats...
It's hard to say that sentence lightly.
It is. I really do. I think that there are a lot of positive gains that we've made in this country. I think that we've made a lot of progress in this country with the way that we treat each other, with the way that we interact, with the way that we're integrated into society. And we're not post-racial by any stretch. I know the president wanted us to get there, but I will say that it is a fight for the soul of this country, an exciting one.
An epic battle for the soul of this country. Again, all eyes on Alaska. All our bloodshot eyes are on it right now. We're still watching the results from Republican voters come in. Alaska, the only Super Tuesday state still undecided right now for the Republicans. A tremendous evening for Donald Trump. Alaska could be his 8th win of the night. Either way, he'll wake up in the morning with a commanding lead in the delegate race and no doubt a very nice bed. CNN will be staying up all night watching the votes come in. Our live coverage continues next with John Berman and Kate Baldwin.
Good evening or good morning, depending on where it is. Welcome to a very special edition of Early Start. I'm Kate Baldwin.
I'm John Berman. It is Wednesday, March 2nd now, the morning after Super Tuesday. We want to welcome all of our viewers here in the United States and around the world. And indeed, it was a Super Tuesday. More super for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Trump in 7 states so far: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Virginia, and Vermont. We are still waiting on Alaska. They are counting right now as we speak in Alaska. And look at that. Just in the last few minutes, Ted Cruz pulled ahead in Alaska. We will watch that throughout the morning.
249 votes ahead at the moment.
249 votes ahead, but it's gone back and forth. It's a nail-biter in Alaska. Now, Donald Trump, after winning the 7 states, instead of holding a victory rally, what did he do? He decided to hold a news conference and said that he is the candidate who can bring the party together.
I'm a unifier. I know people are going to find that a little bit hard to believe, but believe me, I am a unifier. Once we get all of this finished, I'm going to go after one person. That's Hillary Clinton, on the assumption she's allowed to run, which is a big assumption. I don't know that she's going to be allowed to run.
All right, Donald Trump not the only Republican in the win column. Ted Cruz carried his home state of Texas also scored a really big, important win in Oklahoma as well. And Marco Rubio won the caucuses in Minnesota, his first victory since voting began this year, his only victory. Again, though, I should note we are still waiting on Alaska.
And on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton locks in wins in 7 states across the South and a big pickup in the Northeast. Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Bernie Sanders picked up 4 wins in his home state of Vermont, also Oklahoma, Colorado, and Minnesota. Clinton, talking to supporters as the results were coming in, went after the Republican field.
It's clear tonight that the stakes in this election have never been higher. And the rhetoric we're hearing on the other side has never been lower. Trying to divide America between us and them is wrong, and we're not going to let it work.
Let's get first to CNN Politics and CNN Money reporter MJ Lee. She's taken a look at the state of play. As John said, it was a Super Tuesday, maybe a little more super for some, but a lot of these candidates leaving Super Tuesday with a very different narrative this morning.
That's right, guys. I think the 2 big headlines coming out of tonight are that Donald Trump had a very good night and that Hillary Clinton had a very good night. And I think we were expecting both of those outcomes heading into Super Tuesday. And look, I think tonight was all about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton showing that they both have a national coalition and a broad base of support that can win them the nominations and also the support that they can take to the general election in November. And Donald Trump, after winning the early states of New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, tonight showing that he can win a more moderate state like Massachusetts, and then more deeply conservative states and evangelical heavy states across the South. And then for Hillary Clinton, who had more of a rocky start in the early states because Bernie Sanders really gave her a run for her money, she was also able to prove in part, and in large part, I should say, by really capturing the minority vote, including Hispanics, among African Americans, showing that she also has a national coalition. So I can tell you, Trump and Clinton and both of their campaigns are probably very happy at the results of tonight and really, after tonight, eyeing the general election.
MJ, stay with us. Let's bring in now Josh Rogin, CNN political analyst and Bloomberg View columnist, as well as Dylan Byers, our senior reporter for Media and Politics, and national political reporter Maeve Reston, and Ron Brownstein, senior political analyst, CNN senior political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic. So as MJ said, big night for Hillary Clinton, big night for Donald Trump. Ron, where did you see the support for Donald Trump? What surprised you about the big win for Donald Trump? How big was it?
You know, if anyone else had won Alabama and Vermont, Arkansas and Massachusetts, not to mention Georgia and Virginia, we would be saying this race is over. That was something that Mitt Romney could not do in 2012 when he was the nominee. That was something John McCain could not do in 2008 when he was the nominee. No one else in recent times has really been able to bridge that geographic divide, and it's because Donald Trump's support does not fall along the usual lines we have seen in Republican politics, which have usually divided the party along lines of ideology and whether or not you are an evangelical. His support really cuts the party in a different direction, whether you are white-collar, college-educated or not. In every state, Donald Trump is running extremely well among blue-collar Republicans. In most of these states, he was at 47 to 50%, which is striking in a field this large. Generally speaking, he does not run as well among the college Republicans, but no one has been able to consolidate that. And that story is simply true, no matter where you are in the country. What's different, though, this year is that because there is so much resistance to Donald Trump among the leadership of the party, a race that normally would, I think, be on the brink of being over tomorrow, people are still looking for a way to continue it and take it forward. The question is, can they find a plausible path to stopping him?
Vermont, Alabama, Massachusetts, Georgia, Ron Brownstein. I thought you were going to sing a Woody Guthrie song there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Maeve, so that's a look at the Republicans. Give us a headline for the Democratic race. Hillary Clinton with big wins in a lot of states, though Bernie Sanders on the board.
absolutely on the board, and he's made it clear that this race is going to go on for quite some time. When you actually look at the delegate numbers coming out of tonight, Bernie Sanders did not have a bad night at all. At least 4 wins that he's got up on the board, and he's really also pulled in a huge haul in February, $42 million, and really will be able to keep this race going for quite some time. At the same time, he showed his limitations tonight, doing well in states that typically are traditionally white voters, whereas Hillary Clinton really showed her dominance among African-American voters. Then looking in Texas, she really showed a huge lead among Latino voters, showing that she does well in those traditional Democratic strongholds. And he really has not yet been able to demonstrate that he is the candidate who can represent all of those groups that are traditionally in the Democratic camp.
Josh, Marco Rubio, he has a win in the win column. He has a mark in the win column. This is a big night for him.
Yes, Marco Rubio beat expectations, which is the crucial thing.
By not losing everywhere?
Exactly. You can only win your first state once, and he's done it. And that will eliminate Ted Cruz's line that anyone who hasn't won a state should drop out.
Yeah, he seemed to have already quickly modified that. He's the only candidate who's beat Donald Trump in 3 states.
Exactly. But there are other signs, good signs for Marco Rubio that his campaign is putting out, and not so subtly today. They say that if you look at the polls compared to the results, that Marco Rubio beat the polls, especially in Minnesota and Virginia. Also, Ted Cruz beat the expectations in Oklahoma. So what we're seeing is a narrative of slippage, the fact that Donald Trump has polls and then he's not beating those polls, and that perhaps presents an opportunity. Marco Rubio is also about to be bolstered by billions and billions of dollars in super PAC and nonprofit organization money. We saw some of that in the last 2 weeks, but from now until March 15th, we have 2 huge groups that are now ready. The Marco Rubio donors have come off the fence. They're in the game, and they've got skin in the game. So nobody really knows what will happen. Nobody knows if that will have an effect. But for the first time, we're going to see billions of dollars in anti-Trump ads. And those are mostly by Marco Rubio's donors. So that's his play from here until
Dylan
March 15th.
Byers, that's the most glass half full analysis of 1 win out of 11 that you'll ever hear.
Yeah.
But that's what the Rubio people are spinning. I'm not picking on Josh. It's absolutely what the Rubio people and a lot of establishment Republicans are saying right now. And Dylan, the funny thing is, for every Rubio person who says that, Ted Cruz should be able to say that 3 times more.
Right, that's absolutely true. I mean, the Rubio campaign has sort of been a study in how many times can you spin a loss. The Ted Cruz campaign has been a study in that as well. Like you said, in any other Republican primary season, the wins that Donald Trump has pulled off, the margins of victory that he's pulled off, the broad base of support among various groups within the Republican Party, he should be the nominee. The reason he's not, obviously, is because he's effectively trying to take over, stage a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, and there are a lot of establishment voices who want to back Rubio and make sure that doesn't happen. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz, of course, making the case that he's the only candidate who's actually beat Donald Trump consistently in multiple states. But look, I think for Rubio, he's obviously looking forward to March 15th. He's looking forward to these winner-take-all states, Florida, Ohio. If he can make wins there, sure, he has a case. But right now, look at Florida, his home state. He's trailing Donald Trump by 15 to 20 points in the latest polls. So it's very hard to see what his path forward is if he can't change the game in the next 2 weeks.
Beating the polls in Florida don't bring you any delegates in this case.
You actually have to beat candidates, not just beat polls. You can really kill those polls. Ron, Arkansas, take Arkansas for an example. That was part of Ted Cruz's firewall in the South, supposed firewall. Add to that Georgia, Tennessee. I mean, what are Republican voters saying here?
Well, right. I think what you really saw, I want to kind of demur a little bit from some of the things that were said. I think you really saw limits for Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio tonight, especially Ted Cruz, even though he won 2 states. There are 13 states now with exit polls. Only in 2 of them has he gotten above 18% among voters who are not evangelicals. And the big, heavy evangelical states mostly voted tonight. And Kate, as you're suggesting, he didn't win most of them. He didn't win South Carolina. He didn't win Arkansas. He didn't win Alabama. He won Oklahoma and the 3 states that he's won have all had at least 63% of the vote cast from evangelicals. And if you're going to win 20% or less of evangelicals everywhere, I think that die is pretty cast. There are very few places for him to go from this point forward that are natural terrain for him other than places like Louisiana and Mississippi. So I think he is in the same position that Huckabee was in 2008 and Santorum was in 2012, where he can't advance beyond the evangelical beachhead. And then if you're Marco Rubio, I think the challenge, what you're seeing here, is that someone who in South Carolina, when he was standing on a stage with Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, looked like he might be Gary Hart, the kind of candidate of a new generation. He really looks more at this point like Lamar Alexander, circa 1996, where he kind of has a little bit of support everywhere, but not deep enough support almost anywhere to win. And Virginia was the place, I think, that he really had to put a stake, because it was an electorate that was built for him. He, in fact, did well in Northern Virginia. He won college graduates in Virginia with 38% of the vote, but did not win them by enough. And that's kind of the story here. Donald Trump's dominance among the blue-collar side of the party is so great that even if you beat him narrowly among college graduates, that's not enough. Someone has to match his dominance on the other side, and so far no one has shown they can do that.
There were a lot of people joking. There were a lot of people joking overnight that Marco Rubio, the one area in Virginia that he won, was inside the Beltway. Literally inside the Beltway. Politicians supporting Marco Rubio. Guys, stand by, because if you are awake right now, the one state you care about more than any other is Alaska. It is the one state we have not yet called, and we have an important update. We are counting votes in Alaska right now. CNN with a reporter in Anchorage, Paul Verkammen, I believe, joins us by phone. Paul, you're counting the ballots. What do you know?
I'll just read right off the screen to you, John. Hang on. Here are the totals. 9,683 in. I'm going to start alphabetically. Carson has 10.2% of the vote. Ted Cruz, 35.5% of the vote. Kasich, 4.8% of the vote. Rubio, 6.8% of the vote. 16, my bad, thank you, as I read literally off a screen. And Donald Trump, 32.7% of the vote. That's with 9,683 projections. We know they are shattering records here in Alaska tonight in terms of turnout. Right now, it is difficult to gauge what percentage of the turnout this is. It looks like we had one prediction from a GOP insider here that we could be around 25,000 votes. Not sure. Others said that they thought they exceeded vote totals by a good 50% at their precincts. We'll just have to see. We were in Wasilla and West Anchorage, where we saw this dynamic, energized turnout. In many instances, Democrats were switching over to Republicans just for the night so they could vote. And, of course, Alaskans have a lot of independents. They also voting for the GOP. As we've said, it looks like record-shattering turnout here in Alaska. 28 delegates at stake. They will divide these up. It's not winner take all. Back to you.
Paul, do they have any expectation when they believe they'll have the counting all wrapped up this evening or into tomorrow?
Welcome to Alaska and the trickle-in theory of votes. As you may or may not know, there are 40 districts, and some of them so remote that they literally will email them in. We're going to go all the way far to the west of the Aleutian Islands. We're going to go to the north. We know that they're going to hopefully be done here, maybe 45 minutes. I'll literally ask you, what do you think you'll be finished counting here? Midnight our time, that's 4 a.m. your time. So again, you'll just have to watch for the trickle-in theory of Alaska and its 40 districts, many of them completely remote, just sort of come in vote by vote by vote. And if I look at a screen right now, we'll show this to you a little bit. We're going to get up live. We've been crisscrossing this part of the state all night long. We'll show you how they are waiting for. Many of these have not just filled in yet. All right?
All right, Paul Verkammen for us in Anchorage, Alaska. This is, in some ways, a special Alaska edition of Early Start and the Super Tuesday results show. As you can see, it's been going back and forth online. Ted Cruz at 35.5%, Donald Trump at 32.7%. A long way to go, but if Cruz were able to hang on here, this would be his third state.
A win's a win, especially in this Republican race when they are counting. Well, actually, in this Republican race, we've seen third place being a win, second place being a win, but a win is a win is a win. This is one of the few states where they actually use seaplanes to fly in the election results. results. I don't even know if that is actually
Fun
true.
fact.
No, I don't know. I made that up.
maybe fact?
I made that up as we go. All right, we're going to get back to it. But coming up for us, a huge night for Donald Trump, winning 7 states. Does this now make him unstoppable? Ted Cruz says he has a plan to take down Trump as long as pretty much everybody else in the race drops out. Where the battle heads next.
Together we have a choice. We are blessed with a deep, talented, honorable field. For the candidates who have not yet won a state, who have not racked up significant delegates, I ask you to prayerfully consider our coming together, uniting.
Ted Cruz speaking to supporters tonight, calling on the party to come together, uniting. And by come together and uniting, he means the other candidates not named Trump, they should drop out.
And other candidates not named Ted Cruz either.
Right, I guess that's so too. Ted Cruz saying that he is the only candidate that can beat, has beaten, and will beat Donald Trump. But Marco Rubio says tonight, not so fast, as he gets his first primary win in Minnesota, and he looks toward now his home state of Florida, and that comes up on March 15th.
Yeah, either though. Can either Rubio or Cruz or John Kasich, for that matter, or Ben Carson, who's still in the race, can any of them defeat Trump at this point? We're back with our all-star team of reporters and analysts who have been up all night, all around the country. MJ, I want to start with you, MJ Lee. You know, Ted Cruz essentially saying everyone should drop out but me. At this point, as we sit here at 2:20 a.m. Eastern time, no one else is dropping out.
Yeah, no one else is dropping out. And frankly, I think everyone in the race is hoping that the strategy of, well, if everyone except Donald Trump drops out, then I could be the person to challenge Donald Trump. And I don't think that's going to happen as much as Ted Cruz would like that to happen. But look, it's interesting. Heading into his victory speech tonight, it was clear that his message was going to be, I am the only person in this race who has beaten Donald Trump. Up until this point, he had beaten Trump in Iowa, in Texas, and Oklahoma tonight. So that's 3 wins against Donald Trump. But then, as you pointed out, we got the results from Minnesota. The race there was called for Marco Rubio. And by that point, he had actually already made his, I guess, victory speech, even though he hadn't won that state yet. The optics, I thought, for Marco Rubio were a little bit strange. I don't know if you all noticed this, but Rubio, again, made his speech before the race was called for him in Minnesota. This was a big moment for him. This was his first victory of the 2016 cycle, and I didn't feel that he seized on this. And I think this is going to be the perpetual problem and question for Marco Rubio. When are you going to stop being the candidate who is the second choice for voters, the candidate who is waiting behind Donald Trump, perhaps behind Ted Cruz as well, for the voters who are not interested in them, and that they can turn to Marco Rubio? I think at some point his message really has to turn to, I can be a winner as well. I can be that first place guy for the voters who are not interested in Donald Trump.
And for Ted Cruz, Maeve, if you're Ted Cruz tonight, this morning, where are you putting your focus? Where are you putting your money? Where are you changing your travel schedule looking forward now?
Well, I mean, he's got a couple of opportunities, as Ron mentioned before, in some of these states coming up where he can, states like Louisiana, where he can, Mississippi, potentially do well with very conservative voters, try to do better among evangelicals. Donald Trump beat him among evangelicals in a number of states tonight. But I think for Ted Cruz, this was, perhaps a better than expected night. He won with a decent margin in Texas. Then put up that Oklahoma win as well. And he had, some strong finishes in other states. So he has a good number of delegates going in, but he doesn't have a lot of opportunities on the board coming up. So his path to a lot of people could look like a dead end.
Dylan Byers, I want to talk about Marco Rubio again here and the difference right now between Marco Rubio and Donald Trump in terms of delegates. If we can put up the board again, the delegates to date right now, I noticed before that CNN right now we have 302 delegates for Donald Trump, 104 for Marco Rubio. It turns out that Marco Rubio, even though he won Minnesota, actually had a pretty bad night in terms of delegates.
He didn't even meet the threshold in Texas.
He got blanked in Texas, which ends up being a very big deal. So 302, Dylan, to 104. That means he's more than Ohio plus Florida away from Donald Trump right now. Everyone's talking about these winner-take-all states where Marco Rubio could do well. He could win both Ohio and Florida and still trail Donald Trump. He's in a hole.
Well, that's absolutely right. At the same time, wins in Ohio and Florida would at least put him back on the board and sort of, recreate the narrative that he's the one best poised to take on Donald Trump, which, of course, is the narrative that Ted Cruz has taken. I do want to jump on this point about Cruz doing better than expected tonight. He certainly did better than expected in the context of the last several weeks. But if you look at where the Cruz campaign hoped to be months ago, the South was his firewall. The South was where he was going to win big. So now he's looking at states like Louisiana, he's looking at Mississippi. But having come out of the South with effectively losing the South to Donald Trump, it's very hard to see. That was supposed to be his strong point. It's very hard to see what his path going forward is unless he can really turn this narrative that he's the only one who can beat Donald Trump into something that a lot of people rally behind. But of course, the Republican establishment doesn't want to rally behind Ted Cruz. So I'm really not sure what the path forward is for Cruz.
All right, guys, stand by. There's a lot more to talk about, namely what the heck's going to happen to the Republican Party, because it is a serious issue right now with serious questions being raised. That plus we're going to count more votes in Alaska.
Exactly.
Alaska still counting right now, neck and neck, the race right there. We'll give you the latest updates when we come back. They are counting votes as we speak in Alaska, the one state not yet called. Look at that. This is a brand new update. Ted Cruz, a whopping 149 votes ahead. We're not talking percentage precincts, we're talking actual human votes. 149 votes ahead right now in Alaska. We will be counting there for some time. CNN's Paul Verkaman live in Anchorage with the very latest. Only CNN is in Anchorage. Paul, what's going on?
We're going to show you in this very scientific way the latest numbers as we look right now. We've got 10,805 votes in. Again, we're going to go alphabetically. Ben Carson with 10%. Ted Cruz, 34%. Moving on down, Kasich, 5%. Rubio, 17.4%. 33% for Donald Trump. Still not in the so-called Mat-Su Valley. That includes Wasilla, Sarah Palin country, and Palmer. Some here expect that they will go very hard for Ted Cruz. We'll have to see. We were in Wasilla earlier, as we told you. It was shoulder to shoulder, long lines, a lot of enthusiasm in Wasilla earlier tonight. And as these numbers start to trickle in, they're waiting for those numbers. Also, a couple of big precincts still out there. Lower Hillside, that's Anchorage. Middle Hillside, that is Anchorage. Now, how will all this break down delegate-wise? Just the unscientific poll again here, and talking to some of the folks at this table. It looks like it could be possibly, if it's a dead heat between Cruz and Trump, 10 for Trump, 10 for Cruz. Maybe Rubio picks up 5. A lot of this remains to be seen. Of course, you have to have 13%, correct me if I'm wrong, if you want to go ahead and grab a delegate from Alaska. So right now, it looks like you will not see any delegates go to Carson or Kasich based on that. And, of course, one thing to say about the delegates in Alaska and Hawaii, of course, they are going to have one long road trip, and perhaps, I hope, a fun one, to Cleveland. Back to you guys.
I remember hanging out with delegates in Minnesota in 2008, the Republican delegates at the convention there. They are, without a doubt, the most fun-loving, happy people at these conventions. They get a great vacation to the continental U.S. Paul Verkaman, that's amazing. Watching us count the votes right now in Alaska. Thanks so much.
149 votes separating the top two right now. This could be a big moment for Ted Cruz. We'll be watching that as they come in. So after the biggest night in the election so far, did the results bring the clarity, any of the clarity that voters and the establishment have been looking for on both sides, really? Bernie Sanders says he's taken his campaign all the way to the convention, and Republicans, not named Donald Trump, they show no signs of backing out.
So the question right now is the Republican Party splintered? I think the answer to that, Josh Rogan, is yes. The Republican Party right now clearly struggling with what to do going forward. You have people saying they will not vote for Donald Trump if he's the nominee.
Well, it's more than that. It's an existential crisis for the Republicans, and you see this in the leadership comments about Donald Trump, both Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell speaking to their caucuses against the leading Republican candidate. It's almost unprecedented. Mitch McConnell reportedly told his colleagues that if Trump were the nominee, he would drop him like a hot rock. Right? That's pretty strong language. At the same time, you have another part of the Republican Party, the national security hawks, who cannot tolerate a Donald Trump presidency. They see a guy who talks about leaving ISIS to the Russians and so forth as just someone that they can't trust with national security. At the same time, you have a lot of Republicans who are about to come out and endorse Donald Trump, especially after this big win. We've seen reports that Rick Scott, the governor of Florida, is about to endorse Donald Trump. Newt Gingrich has been speaking very favorably about Donald Trump in recent days. So there is a split, but the vast majority of elected Republicans are on the fence. They haven't said one way or the other. That's an untenable position, especially as the race comes to their states. If the race is coming to your state and you're a Republican, you're going to be in a lot of pressure to say, will you support Donald Trump or won't you? And that's what everyone's grappling with at this moment.
And absolutely reinforcing the point of on the fence, confused, and splintered Republican Party right now is when you look at some of the information coming out of these exit polls. You have a couple of states that Donald Trump won. Arkansas, Virginia is one of them. That he won these states tonight. But when you see it right there, are you satisfied if Donald Trump wins the nomination?
Right.
54% of those said no. Ron, that is a head scratcher.
That is, no, well, it is a reminder that Donald Trump is a deeply polarizing figure, less so in the Republican Party, but even there, and certainly in the country at large. Look, as John was kind of alluding to before, I mean, we have two parties going in different directions here. The Democratic die has largely been cast. Bernie Sanders can't win white voters consistently enough or by a large enough margin to win any diverse states, given Hillary Clinton's advantage among African Americans. She's now actually won white voters in more states than he has, and her advantage among African Americans is overwhelming, 80% plus almost everywhere. All of the big states on the Democratic side are heavily diverse, and given these patterns, he simply is not going to be able to win any of them. So that has a pretty clear trajectory where that's going. On the Republican side, as we said before, in a normal year with any other candidate, someone who could win both Vermont and Massachusetts on the one hand and Arkansas and Georgia on the other, you would say they are the nominee. But Donald Trump represents such a dramatic change of Republican views and positions on many issues that there is a sense among many in the party that this amounts to a hostile takeover. And I think what you're going to see is money and incentive for candidates to stay in much longer than they would have in a normal race, trying to find any way, if not to beat him individually, collectively deny him that first ballot majority and then see where it goes from there.
No, you could make the case that actually the bigger field is the way to go, right? If John Kasich can win Ohio somehow, if Marco Rubio can win Florida somehow, if you just split the votes and make it impossible for Donald Trump to pick him up, maybe
Trump
that's the way to get him. MJ, I was just reading, you had a great piece on CNN.com that I think posted a short time ago with some killer quotes from Republican insiders like Tim Pawlenty and Trent Lott, who are just, terrified right now with the direction this is all going.
Yeah, that's right. I think when Josh described this as an existential crisis for the Republican Party, that is not an exaggeration. The establishment Republicans, party leaders, party insiders that I have spoken to over the last several days, they are using words like catastrophic, cataclysmic, the end of the Republican Party as we know it. I mean, these are very alarmist, alarmist rhetoric that we're hearing from members of the Republican Party. I spoke to Tim Pawlenty for this piece, who is supporting Marco Rubio. By the way, he said that this moment in the party is like seeing an airplane, and the airplane represents the Republican Party. We're seeing pieces of the surface start to come off the plane, and now we are wondering whether the wing or the engine will come off next. So we are seeing the Republican Party extremely fractured because for a long time, I think the members of the party did not know what to do about Donald Trump and what to do about his rise, and now they are confronting a situation where this is right in front of them now, right? He has won all of these states. He has dominated Super Tuesday. It sure looks like he is likely going to be the nominee. and the party has not come to terms with how are we going to fight him and stop him.
Well, when you talk about coming to terms, I mean, Maeve, Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, who had no love lost with Donald Trump, he even said tonight that he might be coming to a point where the Republican Party may need to get behind Ted Cruz.
You know that pains
in order
him
to
to
stop
say that.
Donald Trump. If you know anything about Lindsey Graham, that is not something that you would ever think would come out of his mouth. That's a huge statement, Maeve.
Yeah, I mean, those two can't stand each other and haven't been able to for some time. But I think, you know, what's so interesting, as MJ was talking about, is that the party is now at this moment where we are going to see a lot of these donors and establishment Republicans go really hard after Donald Trump over these next 2 weeks, sort of thinking that this is their final moment to really knock him out. You know, you obviously have the anti-Trump super PAC that was talking to donors today about how they're going to do that. But the real question is, does that just end up helping Hillary Clinton in the end? You know, I mean, it's so clear that there's a huge disconnect between these establishment Republicans and these voters who are turning out in droves to support Donald Trump at the polls. And when you have that kind of disconnect in the party, it really is a crisis that could, you know, that could end up handing the presidency to Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely, guys. Stand by. Much more to discuss coming up. As Maeve mentioned, Hillary Clinton. We're going to be talking about Hillary Clinton. A big night for her, winning 7 of the 11 states up for grabs for Democrats. What's the path forward, though? And why did victory speech start sounding a little bit more like Bernie Sanders this evening? That's coming up next.
What I have said is that this campaign is not just about electing a president. It is about making a political revolution. And what that revolution is about is bringing millions of people into the political process.
That was Bernie Sanders speaking to supporters in his home state, Vermont, his first of 4 victories of the night. Hillary Clinton, though, had the bigger night of the two on the Democratic side, winning 7 states.
Let's bring back our all-star panel to discuss this. And, you know, Dylan, one of the most striking things when you looked on how Hillary Clinton won, it's how she won in other states like South Carolina and Nevada as well. Look at the African-American vote in the states of Alabama and Georgia. In Alabama, Hillary Clinton won 92% of the black vote, 93% now. In Georgia, she won 83% of the black. And now it's 85. What happens, just so you know, is these exit polls update throughout the evening. So sometimes the numbers change right before our very eyes, but they're even bigger now. 85% in Georgia, 93% in Alabama, Dylan. You know, the African-American vote's so crucial in putting together the Democratic coalition, so crucial as you move through these primary states. And there are plenty of black votes to be had in Illinois, plenty in Michigan as well, and plenty in Ohio. These are all states coming up.
Right. No, it's extremely crucial, and there's no question that she's shored up support among the vast majority of Democratic African-American voters. Obviously, we remember the big narrative coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire was, can Bernie Sanders actually pick up support among minority groups, among Hispanics, among African-Americans who are so key to the Democratic Party? And the answer seems to be like, yes, he can pick up a few, but not nearly as many as Hillary Clinton can, and I think that's going to go a long way toward putting Sanders' campaign to rest. Certainly not tonight, maybe 2 weeks from now, maybe a little while after that. And if you look at the exit polls coming out of all the states, what you see is that she has broadened her support, not just among Latinos, African Americans. She's broadened her support across age groups, across income. She's doing much better across the board. The only area that she hasn't been able to pick up is the 18 to 29-year-old vote, which Sanders picks up handily in every single state except for Alabama. And that, of course, continues to raise questions about the sort of enthusiasm gap with younger voters.
Yeah, and you see that there in Massachusetts. Sanders got 65% between 18 and 29-year-olds, and that is a state that Hillary Clinton won. I mean, that is definitely a soft spot, if you, at the very least, that Hillary Clinton has here and has all along. But do you see her? How does she appeal to that part of the Bernie Sanders support, Maeve, without alienating them at the very same time?
Well, I mean, in some ways, the best thing that Hillary Clinton has going for her here is Donald Trump, right? She's really started to kind of refine her message to talk about there needing to be more, love and happiness and togetherness in America. She's trying to unite the party against Trump, and that may help her to some extent, pull in some of these younger voters. But I mean, this is a huge problem for her enthusiasm gap, and one that she's going to have to spend the rest of the year working on if she actually does pull off the nomination. The one person who can really help her with this potentially is Barack Obama, of course. If once he gets out on the campaign trail, he really could help her bring together those two parts of the party that she has not been able to unify yet.
Ron, as you look ahead in the next few states that vote, we have Michigan a week from now. We have a big debate Sunday night here at CNN in Flint, Michigan. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders there. How does it shape up based on what you saw tonight in Super Tuesday? Again, a broad, range of states here. How does the map look for her?
In some ways, I think the most revealing state was Massachusetts, right? Because it was a state where Bernie Sanders ran even with Hillary Clinton among white voters. It's a state, of course, neighboring of Vermont, but her support among minority voters pushed her over the top. And that is the challenge he faces, John. As I said before, every large state on the Democratic side is a diverse state. There is not a large state. California, New York, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, go down the list. They're all substantial minority populations. And the challenge, Bernie Sanders has done better in this race than anyone expected, including probably his own team, because he has been able to move beyond the beachhead of simply relying on young voters and upper middle class whites. He is competitive for working class whites, but he is not able to establish enough of an advantage among those white voters to overcome what is a Hillary Clinton, tsunami among African Americans. I believe she has been above 70% among African Americans in every state and above 80% in almost every state. And so when you're looking at that kind of advantage, it's in some ways the reverse of 2008. In 2008, she cumulatively won white voters by 16 points. She won Hispanic voters by 26 points, and she lost because Barack Obama won 80% of African Americans. And now we are seeing her do that and not having nearly that kind of deficit among the other groups. So very tough math for Bernie Sanders. They do believe, one quick point, they do believe that they may be able to make more inroads among African Americans outside the South than in the South. That's going to be tested very quickly as we go, as you say, to Michigan, Illinois, and Ohio in the next couple of weeks.
And we'll learn that very soon. Guys, stand by. Why? Because we have an important update from Alaska, the one state still counting votes. We are going to go to Alaska live right after the break. All right, 2:52 a.m. on the East Coast. All eyes on Alaska right now. They are still counting. And look at this, 60% of the precincts reporting Ted Cruz has pulled ahead by 314 votes. Want to go live. CNN's Paul Verkammen is in Anchorage. Paul, what's the latest?
All right, Kate and John, once again, we're going to go ahead and go to the screen. They're literally inputting the numbers behind me as we speak. And as we look at the bottom, here are your total votes. 13,595 in. We'll give it to you in percentages. Carson with 10%. Cruz with 35.8%. We have Kasich with 4.5%. Rubio with 16.2%, and Donald Trump at 33.5%. Looking at the screen, some of the districts still not reporting. A lot of the Mat-Su Valley, including Wasilla, the Sarah Palin stronghold, and we have some of the bigger neighborhoods, affluent neighborhoods, hillside neighborhoods in Anchorage that are not in yet. These votes still coming in right now. And again, reminding you, the delegates proportional here. So right now, the estimate that we had earlier, as we told you, was maybe 10 for Cruz, 10 for Trump if they were to tie. Toss in a little 5 more for Rubio. Just remains to be seen as the numbers come into us here in Alaska, where the lights are still on and everyone's celebrating democracy in action. Back to you, Kate. John.
The lights are still on here. That's right. We're going to stay on until we get those Alaska results. That's for sure. Paul Verkammen in Anchorage for us. Paul, thank you very much. We are waiting for those for that all to come in. Josh, 28 delegates at stake, proportional as they all are, the Republican side right now. But this could be a third pickup for Ted Cruz tonight.
That's exactly right. I mean, the headline here is that every delegate counts, because we're in that proportional phase where even though Donald Trump is going to win at least seven states. He's not going to be getting many more delegates than Ted Cruz. He could be within 20 or 30 delegates of Ted Cruz. Marco Rubio is going to be down about another 100 delegates. So that's a problem for Marco Rubio. But again, the game here is to prevent Trump from getting to that magic number, 1237. If he gets there, it's over. So that's the most important thing. So every delegate that everybody gets is one that Donald Trump doesn't get. And that keeps this going longer and longer. And that's good for everybody but Trump.
You know, MJ, I do not think it is lost on anyone that Sarah Palin, the former governor of Alaska, the former nominee for the Republican vice presidency, that she endorsed Donald Trump. If Ted Cruz manages to win in Alaska, I imagine, MJ, that would be very gratifying for the Cruz folks who would have wanted that Palin endorsement.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a huge victory for the Ted Cruz campaign. And remember, when Donald Trump announced the Sarah Palin announcement, this was a big get for them. The former VP nominee is still very popular, even though her clout may have diminished a little bit since the last cycle. Still very popular among conservatives. Donald Trump clearly thought that Palin could help win over some evangelicals for him. She hasn't actually been on the road very much with him, and actually ever since the Chris Christie endorsement, he has been playing more the role of really surrogate, introducing Trump on stage, traveling with him to various states. So yeah, I think that if Donald Trump lost Alaska after all of that, that would be a big disappointment for him.
And Dylan, one thing we've heard on both sides, the kind of the commentary tonight, and we'll continue to hear, is campaigns don't stop running; they just run out of money. And that seems the money thing, though. Looking forward, money is the thing that there is no shortage of in this election. I mean, does that suggest to you that there is no motivation on the Republican side and the Democratic side? Bernie Sanders hauled in a huge number for February for anyone to do anything other than take it to the convention.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And if you look at Bernie Sanders, my guess is that he's his campaign quietly is coming to terms with the fact that he's probably not going to win the Democratic nomination. But look, from the beginning, before Bernie Sanders had his sort of catastrophic rise, meteoric rise, his campaign was really about pushing a Democratic socialist agenda, a liberal agenda, and moving Hillary Clinton more towards the left. And now that's, he's been effective in doing that. So the longer he can go on and as long as he has money, he'll continue to do it.
All right, guys, stick with us. Much more ahead on the results on Super Tuesday. Still waiting to find out exactly how this plays out in Alaska. We've got special coverage. A special edition of Early Start continues right after this.